You can transcend any framework like that by simply being comfortable in your own skin.
Right, exactly. Don't
To
accept
be
what
the
any
guy
of-
that you are. I never understood why people, like in online games, why people cheat. I don't get, like, I don't get the logic of it.
Yeah,
Like, what's
yeah.
the point? Because you're not like
You're
nothing's happening, right? You're not doing anything. You're not achieving anything.
You think you know the world, something like that could happen and you have no idea. One thing I think about is, why do we ask the question why? You know? It's like, what do you want to know? Like, why is it that we want to know? Why is it like, oh, does it have to have a reason?
It's kind of akin to magic, because if we're saying like in 1,000 years we'll find a way to have replicators and generate food out of molecules, that is essentially saying anything can be, and we're just trying to reconstruct that knowledge. Of course, the person can only live a life from one standpoint, but it doesn't mean that they will be in conflict with everybody else at all times. It just points out to the fact that you want to consciously define and decide what it is, without allowing the society and external circumstances to guide your whole life. Hello, welcome.
Hello, what's up?
What's going on? It's a more or less normal episode day today.
Get back down from the, Yeah.
Although we'll still probably try to find a way to break our minds with some kind of something today.
All day, every day, man. But that's life, right? Ebbs and flow.
Yeah, definitely. That's something I kind of was noticing recently, is that I definitely go through periods. Like some periods are kind of very serious, very kind of nose to the ground, just focused and serious. And some periods are just silly, relaxing, just doing whatever. And it's very interesting because I literally just noticed it. For example, today, the whole day I spent just in a creative flow that was just nonstop. But it's not like that every day. Some days it's definitely like, what am I doing? What is life? What is going on? Just kind of all over the place.
That's typical, man. I think everybody go through this, right? It's like every day is just different. Sometimes you feel great, and then it's like, oh yeah, the world is yours, everything is great. But the next day is like, oh, screw this,
Yeah.
Because that's how it is. That's what humans are, right? Like you just go through these. I mean, I wonder about if animals go through this. I think so, right? Like even with cats and dogs, they get depressed sometime, right? So,
I don't
but
know. I don't think you can afford to if you're out there in the jungle. It's like the tummy
Right.
rumbles and then you go.
Yeah,
you don't have
yeah.
a choice.
So that goes back to the idea that when you have free time, you're
This
gonna
is
you're
what
gonna get
happens.
depressed. You're gonna get
Yeah.
depressed because that's just how
You're gonna have too much time on your hands allows you to realize too many things about your situation.
Yeah, and that's the kind of the quandary of modern life, right? Everybody's busy trying to survive, and even if you're not on the survival level, even let's just say you're well off, it may be even more problematic because you have enough money, so that means you actually don't worry about some of these like your time. You have more time, meaning you're gonna have more chances of you thinking way too much about your purpose of life and all
Kind
the
of
other.
getting lost in thoughts and not finding answers. And that loops us into the topic that I wanted to delve into today, which is pretty interesting. It's mostly going to be philosophy and exploration of various topics related to epistemology. So in the previous episodes, we already explored the kind of shakiness of all kinds of subjective interpretations and your ideas about reality and the shaky ground of definitions of terms, of all the meaning that we assign to things and how all that is somewhat as a subjective process. So today I wanted to take a look at something together and see what kind of thoughts, ideas, and conclusions that evokes to us. And actually I have something to share for the screen for this. So should help us to engage with the topic fully, because some of these ideas, they're definitely much more complex, but I wanted to experiment and explore a visual mind map together to keep the ideas there on the forefront of our conversation, because together I want to see if we can examine kind of the conclusion after examining those ideas. Let me see if I can share this. Does this show up?
Yes. Yep. Looks good.
Okay, nice. So the idea I wanted to explore is the limits of knowledge and belief in reality. So again, we're exploring something fundamental such as knowledge, which is, we touched on it before, it's some kind of structured information, right? Something that we've learned about the world and recorded it as this is true. But the science of epistemology itself is concerned with figuring out what exactly, how we determine what is true and what we can consider knowledge. And this is an exploration on that. And there are some interesting facts, I guess, that we would explore here that will reveal that what we consider knowledge is not as straightforward as we once thought. For example, can you think yourself, what do you consider knowledge, or what do you consider as knowing something for yourself? Or like, how do you know when you know something?
Well, okay, so
And I guess you could think about different ways of knowing, right? You could read about the thing and then you kind of have that knowledge, but you have no idea whether it's true, right? It's just information that you received, but it's technically
yeah,
knowledge because you can wield it. It's some information that, like a framework. If you learn how to code, that is knowledge, right? You know how to code now.
because I think for me, I think I'm on the stance of that all knowledge are utilitarian, right? In the sense that any of these structure that you would define as knowledge are just series of information in which you can use for whatever purposes, right? Because the difference between that and that random sets of information is just that the knowledge in this example will actually give you some way of like you can use it somehow,
Right, for
right?
some kind of
So to
purpose.
me, that's how I interpret it. Like there is no knowledge when you can't use it. Like otherwise,
Okay.
that would just be information. It would just be some sort of a statement about the world in which it will just be it will be defined as just information, right? So information as opposed to knowledge. So a knowledge it has to be useful.
I think that's that's a good way to put it. Knowledge is some kind of information that can be used towards some kind of
Something, some
purpose
kind
or
of goal, right? So meaning you're gonna have to construct in your mind what is useful and what's not. So it's very human centric, right? Like it's being used by humans because as far as we're concerned, animals don't have knowledge in the sense that they're not understanding these. I mean, they can interact with the world, but they're not building something out of it because they can extract some sort of a set of information that's knowledge so that they can use it to do something else, right? So the only we're only concerned in the human. When it comes to knowledge, it's only human, right? Uh,
not necessarily. That's where kind of the language, the topic of language comes in, because the animals still know stuff, right? They know what danger is, they know what fire is, they know what water and food is. All those things are
right,
objects in their world, and they
but
can have skills, related to those.
yes. So now you're with defining knowledge, right? So the idea that okay, if animal knows about these phenomena in the world, but are they utilizing that knowledge or is it just instinct? Like, okay, they see fire. Okay, not good. Because in their neural networks, they know that heat is bad, or at least getting burned is bad, right? Somehow that registers.
Well, that's the
Is
question,
that going to
right? I
be
guess
knowledge? Is that knowledge then? Like they
it
actually use
is
that,
like, an animal will know how to catch a fish. It's technically knowledge, and they can
but
do
are
that
they
better than you, for example.
right? But is that instinctual or is it just like they're actively using their brain to like, oh, I know this is how I catch things? Because human have to learn, right? Like you like for example, right, fishing. If you never fished before, you don't know how to do it. But if you have done it, then that's a series of there has to be I don't know. I almost feels like there has to be an intentional utilization as
Okay,
opposed
so
to just
something,
instinctual.
I would still say it's a kind of innate knowledge versus learned, right? So animals have a learning capacity for sure, but they don't learn advanced things that they don't need. They're not humans. They don't need to know how to do math and stuff, or at least,
So
complex stuff.
yeah, so vis-a-vis that, how do we define knowledge as opposed to is that only human, or is can animal actually have knowledge, or are we just arguing semantics? I don't know, right?
Yeah.
Is this just
But yeah, for us, we can just talk about it for what humans consider knowledge. But it's
right?
definitely, I think, it's some kind of
So,
information used to navigate, reality. Really, where what interesting is where in that concept in its description, where does veracity come in? Because how do you know when the knowledge is true? How do you know that it is actually useful and it's gonna do what it's saying gonna do? So, uh,
well,
something to keep in mind as we start exploring the things here, because again, as always, it leads lots of different concepts behind it. Once we start thinking about, yeah, what is knowledge? Is it just an instinct? Is it skill? Is it related to language, etc.? But yeah, let's try to dive in, and we can go through these one by one, and we'll try to stop each one because I want just for each of these to be a discussion point and see that we both understand what it means before we proceed to the next ones. So the first kind of branch that I want to start with is this skepticism about knowledge and reality, just as an example that you can't question anything and it produces certain results. First, I wanted to juxtapose the concept of belief and knowledge, because you can believe in stuff, but does it necessarily constitute knowledge, right? For example, you can believe in God. Is that knowledge of God, or is that just a belief? And I think the point is that those are two different separate things. Believing and knowing are definitely separate. So, for example, many people consider belief in God as foolish, and they favor knowledge and scientific proof instead. Those would be materialists, I guess, atheists, but that's essentially their framework. So, for now, we are creating this dichotomy: believing and having proof for something and only believing that. So, I guess believing without proof and believing with proof, where knowledge is the believing with proof kind. Does this dichotomy make sense? Kind of faith and knowledge as two separate things?
yeah. Mhm.
Okay. And then the faith by such people, by materialists, for example, would be seen as a cognitive error. So it's distinct from knowledge, which is based on proof. So that's the difference, right? Faith is just belief. Knowledge has actual proof, which provides building blocks for you to believe in it. That brings us to materialism. So they use the word to know as a claim. They claim to know rather than believe because they rely on demonstrable evidence, right? So they can, for example, in science, you go through the same steps and another guy goes through the same steps and both receive the same result. And the strict proof of the world's existence and its orderliness is impossible. So this is the thesis that I wanted to explore, because essentially, whether you use one or the other, it's not like science, answers all the questions and can even prove many things. As we'll see next, science itself has certain axioms that are accepted without proof. And axioms are essentially something that is just taken as true for the system itself to rely on it. And the two axioms for that in science are that the world exists and that the world behaves in an orderly manner. So the existence of the world is just taken for granted. Like nobody tries to prove it, because that is a whole other separate goose chase that will not really, essentially can't be proven with the system which relies on it. The fact that the world behaves in an orderly, lawful manner is essentially the fact that it can be, things are predictable. So, for example, our knowledge relies on accepting these axioms because all attempts to verify the world's existence or its lawful behavior depend on our own senses and logic. But those tools themselves, like their reliability, cannot be proven without referencing the senses and logic. So this is a little caveat, this little loophole that you don't necessarily think about and not aware of when evaluating scientific proofs or theories or any materialist explanation, which is these egocentric and logical traps. That's where these ideas arrive at. It talks about the fact that we cannot step outside our consciousness to verify its accuracy. So you are kind of locked into your consciousness, and whatever is happening there is just, you don't have a way to compare it to anything outside of it, because that's all you have access to. So the senses, the logic, all the reasoning, they're all just attributes within your own consciousness. So you don't have a way to compare those tools to anything else. There's the vicious circle problem. So the tools themselves that are used to prove reality, such as logic and senses, themselves need validation. Again, this is just being very, very strict in the way of this philosophical exploration of reality, because you essentially don't take anything for granted and everything needs to be proven. And these are essentially existing philosophical problems and loopholes that point to the fact that you don't really have any verifiable tools and ways to ground anything upon. There's also induction problem. So it means that you can't really predict reality. For example, the way the term black swan problem appeared is before the Europeans, they only saw white swans everywhere and they thought that swans can only be white. But then in Australia, I think once the people traveled to that continent, they saw that there were black swans there, and it was just unprecedented. And the final one, which is pretty famous, it's the Gödel's incompleteness theorem, and it shows that some truths cannot be proven within their systems. So it just, the limit to the proof itself is essentially emphasized by that. So this kind of presents this little introduction to the fact that even in science and formal logic and philosophy, if you really try to drill down to find the foundation of what you can base your understanding of reality on, you don't really find it.
Yeah. I mean, there is no system that can really be the be all and all system to define everything in the universe or multiverse or whatever. Even this we don't know, right? Is it a universe? Is it a multiverse? Is it we don't know. All we have is the scientific method. It's imperfect, but it's kind of like that's all we have, right? For us to know about the world as much as we can, because you need the standard. You need something in which you can measure stuff. And that measurement, of course, is flawed, right? But this at least give us something in which to base our kind of a worldview on, or our world, how we perceive it. It's like the anchor, right? So once we found out, basically, according to Einstein, that the idea that everything is relative, space and time wise, it's just like, oh, we're just like within this locality, right? Meaning that whatever we measure is only limited to where we are, what we can see. So if you're at a different space in time, then what you see, what you experience will be different in terms of the locality. So nothing is absolute, everything is relative, meaning that measurement has to change. So even within the scientific method, like it's definitely it's gonna have to adapt to whatever new things that we can find out about the world. It's right now, as far as what we have found out so far, we have established a lot of standards of measurements and kind of discoveries that are kind of repeatable in the process of physics, chemistry, and what have you, right? So that's the basis in which we can repeatedly find these patterns to repeat. That means at least we have something. So it's not just complete random chaos, and we're figuring out, oh, okay, these two elements combined together equals this. We can try that many times, thousands, millions of times, and it's still true. Basically, how we're finding what's true and what's not is by this process of experimentation, finding out about patterns and pattern recognition, and that itself becomes a series of knowledge in which we can base our future endeavor of scientific discovery, I guess, upon those kind of pillars. But yes, like you were saying, even that is still flawed, because yes, there is almost like a boundary which you cannot go beyond, right? Like you are establishing the world exists, and then the world is, we assume it to be a certain way because that's what it seems like, right? But we're trying to use that and to find out more about, okay, is this true? Is this not? I mean, Newton was wrong when he first introduced his worldview. He thought that the world is going to be, what was the word? The universe is static. That is not, it behaving a certain way, because that's what he observed at the time. But later on, we kind of figured out, oh, it's actually a lot more to it than that. So this is the whole relativity that came around, right? That kind of proves that the world is not static.
Right.
It's expanding. It's, so that's kind of how where we're at. And obviously, some people find that it's not good enough in the sense that, well, what's my purpose? The science doesn't tell you how to live, or, it's only telling you like what to avoid sometimes, right? Like these are phenomena in the world in which we find about, we can categorize, we can having an understanding of, which can
Yeah,
help
kind of
you.
just physical properties, really, right?
Right.
About the
So it
laws of
doesn't,
physics.
yeah, but it doesn't explain, okay, well, why or how. I mean, people want to find out, but there is that kind of boundary in which we have never pierced it, right? When it comes to uh, the origin of the world or how it's come about. That's why people go to religion, right? It's like, well, it's something lacking that science cannot.
Yeah, that's where it crosses over to belief, but that's where that's a whole other world. But kind of this topic of exploration made me think about the fact that even science in any kind of materialistic explanation of the world, it's still essentially not completely real or true in a sense where it's like, oh, it's all proven, we definitely know it like that. Which makes it me think that it's all kind of like rules of the game that I can't tell whether we're discovering them or whether we're writing them because of that, because they're both faith and knowledge science. They don't have the fundamental proof under them. That's where it gets quite
Well,
trippy.
but it's kind of a slippery slope though, because because what I'm saying is the scientific method is the best that we can have according to what we can do as humans, right? What our intelligence can provide us with the observation, with the mental capacity to kind of store these as knowledge, as experiments, as kind of a whole under the umbrella of science. So it explains a lot of things, but that doesn't mean that it can I mean, it can explain how, but it doesn't explain why, right? I don't think it doesn't matter how advanced we can be scientifically and technologically. I feel like it's almost almost like an impossible chasm because how do you go beyond? And once that you go beyond consciousness, or like, okay, if you have a way of, I don't know how you will get to it, but let's just say you can have a lot more, say, viewpoints than say the human consciousness. Let's just say if you can imagine if you have right now, if you go to a police station, you have access to all the CCTV footages of around in a given district or what have you. So that's technology, granting us eyes, essentially, seeing what's happening around there. But even then, it's still observation of the quote unquote real world.
Yeah,
Meaning, how
that's
do
still just
you,
different perspectives within the world.
right? So you can only expand on the kind of different perspective that you can find in different locality, but you can't really go beyond that.
Yeah, you
Like,
can't jump out of that framework.
right. So
This is
you're
something
still
I wanted
under, yeah, go
to
ahead.
touch on this, and a few of these future points. We're actually going there. But first, a couple more points about these limitations. And that's just the fact that language itself, it's limiting because it's not reality. It's just the description of reality, and it never really truly matches it. So language as itself is an imperfect map that way. And then something that we encountered before as well, the fact that every definition, uses the words that define those words, which is essentially akin to this justification, any justification demanding prior to justification, which causes infinite regress because it just never stops. So at some point, even for science to work, you just have to pick a thing and just say, it's true. And just like have it as a belief, essentially, which is the craziest thing because it means that we never, in this world, we can never have a ground, or an answer apart from God, this is what God was supposed to represent essentially, some kind of primal cause, the creator of the whole framework, the concept of a supreme intelligence. And it was ends that problem of infinite regress. So this is probably partly why religion was created, because essentially to plug the hole of this unknown, right? The complete unknownness of the world. Something I haven't really thought of in this exact way, but the fact that questions on God in its origin, they're meaningless because essentially the nature of God is beyond our comprehension, which I've always thought like this is kind of almost like a cop out too, because I mean, why would you decide it that way? Because it just feels like you're giving up. But I think it points to the fact that you cannot, yeah, it just acknowledges the fact that you cannot solve the riddle of the reality and how it's made, right? Why it operates this way just from within the reality itself.
Yeah, it's like, who can prove God's existence? It's almost nobody have done it. And it's almost like we can't find it in the world that we live in. Where is the proof? Where is the proof that God exists? I mean, it's only all kind of like, one can say, oh, wow, there's all this magnificence because of the super
Right.
intelligence of
Yeah.
God. That's
To some people, it's that.
That's an opinion. That's it. There's no proof, no nothing. You're just like, oh yeah, you just believe that, right?
So what would the proof be though? Like
There is
what
no
would
proof. You can't do it.
what would it be though?
You there's no, I mean, who's gonna say it? And what entity is it gonna tell you that, right? Because we seems from our limited perspectives as humans, and we cannot see it. We cannot find it. There's nothing in
Then
our.
this is where like I kind of understand faith then, because essentially people,
You gave up and just say
it's not really giving up. They kind of almost, I guess, see it as a logical conclusion. The fact that it can only be explained by God's existence. You know what I mean? Because there's nothing else that can answer this question. So de
well, yeah,
facto, this is the answer.
but they don't know that, right? It's so that's what comes down back to this, where sometimes it is kind of frustrating because when it comes to belief and all this, it's like there's not much you can say about it other than, well, okay, you believe that.
It's just
Okay.
a choice at that point, right?
Right.
But I can see how it, between this, and the fact that, oh, okay, we just don't know. Yeah, I guess I don't know. It's still the fact that some people are more comfortable with not knowing than others, right?
It's because one thing I think about is, why do we ask the question why? It's like, what do you want to know? Like, is it why is it that we want to know? Why is it like, oh, does it have to have a reason?
Not because the
I
questions
mean,
exist, because
I
we're
think
curious.
that's about it. That's all because we're curious. Like, we think that the world works under certain rationales, right? So meaning that, oh, if this happened because of this, and that must mean there's something else beyond that, right? It's like,
It's
well,
kind of like the magic tricks, because you can watch magic and you can just be fascinated with it, but you can also find out how the magic is made, and then the magic is gone, because then you just see the
right.
mechanism behind it, and it's got to be something similar to that. Because these days, like I can totally watch Magic Tree and just enjoy it and not have a desire to know how it's done, because I know it's done some way, right?
Yeah.
It's not like real magic would be the breaking of the causal chains, right? The cause and
Right.
effect would be broken. You would snap your fingers and you have a nugget of gold in your hand, There's no direct cause effect relationship, so that would be magic. But even then, essentially magic is a type of technology that you either understand or you don't. Because, as we talked about before, all the technology that we have these days is magic to people who lived, 50 years ago.
Yeah, it's just a kind of way of the world or the manipulation of the physical realities that, because we are performing magic in the modern day, right? Like, we have been doing this for a long time with the Industrial Revolution, every new kind of technological advance that we make is basically magic. We're trying to transmutate some property of the world and turn it into something
Right,
else.
control the elements.
Right. So it's nothing different than alchemy. It's just that we just, are finding real ways to kind of do these things. Think about the fact we have cars. People figured out about combustion engines. They figured out, oh, these properties have this kind of I mean, these phenomenons or things in the world have this property. We can use it to turn it into something else or what have you, right? And
Hmm.
then we have the manipulation of these phenomena, if you will, or property of the physical world. And then we are making things that are impossible from before, right? Nature never intended this to happen naturally, but we made stuff, right? So we're artificially creating our own kind of, so it's manipulatable. And we're finding more ways to do
Yeah,
that.
which is still crazy. This is where I can't help but thinking about the parallels. Like I encounter the parallels with the game everywhere. Like everybody is making it, and philosophers, people who talk about spirituality, they all refer to this idea of a game, of life being a game, because the similarities. Oh, similarly in a game, you discover technologies, you develop skills, and you're able to make things. I mean, surely our computer games are based on our reality, but still the fact that we're able to reproduce that reality in a computer game made of ones and zeros is just still, it's mind-boggling to me, especially considering how complex some modern games can be.
Yeah, so we're finding these kind of with diving under the hood and finding out all these properties about the real
Mm-hmm.
world, and then we're actually manipulating them. So that's our basis of reality. The fact that we can have a theory and then execute it and then actually find the result, meaning that's the tangible thing that we can find in the world. So this is where, because of science, we're finding out about these
Yeah.
properties, right?
But the question is, are these properties are there in the world built into it for us to discover, or we're kind of creating these properties by looking, just by the fact of looking? It reminds me of the whole observer's effect, the fact that looking determines the outcome. Isn't that what it means? Isn't that it means, like, if we looked, like if we develop a smaller and smaller microscope, that is, I don't know, is able to look beyond the Planck length, which is our current limitation. Planck is the smallest unit. Then we'll see something. That's my
Yeah.
understanding. It's just a matter of developing the tools. But then the funny thing is that the tools themselves are invented within this reality. So it's almost like whatever we're looking for, we're finding. It's that, which
We,
itself might be kind of a spiritual truth,
yeah,
because if you look for God, you'll find him.
which is why people kind of use that as a not proof but like indication that um that God exists. The fact that all these things are possible and nobody, like, we're finding out about these combinations that are never been put before, meaning this is already possible before we even found it, right? Meaning somebody created this thing. That's their logic, right? That's the logic that even though human civilization, let's just say if you go
Right,
back 1,000 years ago, this was not possible then, but it's still possible then because it's possible to put that
right.
combination together. You just didn't find it yet. So that's
That's kind of like
what
the
some
same
people.
question as whether the tree falls, does anybody hear? If nobody hears it, does it actually happen? So back then, if science wasn't being done the way it's done today, was it possible? I mean, I hear perspectives of like non-dualistic perspectives that, yeah, that's not the case. These are just all appearances in the mind. Essentially, because the consciousness is the one that is seeing, it's seeing it in itself. So if there's no consciousness to see something, the thing doesn't exist. So I've heard even of such propositions, because you can't tell, right?
I don't know. To me, my first reaction is, well, I can't trust my senses. Like, it's as flawed as it is. You can't, I mean, nobody knows. That's a problem, right? But we can say that, well, because we're so prone to make mistakes and view things in like we're so flawed at our perception that to say that, oh, your consciousness, if it doesn't recognize it, that's not true. I mean, where do you get that from, right? It's like, well, you have proof of that? Well, you don't.
No, no, it's I'm saying that if you don't see something, it's the same as it not existing for you. So,
Well,
for example, right now,
for the observer, sure, but does that
but
mean it's
there's
not
only
true
observer.
ever?
That's the thing. Say if only you exist in the world and you sit in a room, from your perspective,
Right.
only a room
That's your
exists.
yeah.
you can't concern yourself with anything else. There's
Well,
only
yes,
what you know about. The
yes,
fact
but
that there may be an objective world with what in it. You don't even know what would be in
mm,
it. So it's
right.
kind of just dividing all phenomena into known and unknown. Unknown, as I like to say, anything can happen, anything can be. It doesn't really mean anything, it's meaningless. We can only talk about what we experience, what
Well,
we
yes,
observe, right?
yes. This is the current scientific what have you on this earth, where we have knowledge, all the knowledge that humans have ever gathered is only true here on Earth, or at least, I mean, we're trying to kind of see what the commonality into the universe. Like, okay, the speed of light
Yeah, yeah. What
measured, we
what what
observed.
behaves
So we're trying
where?
to find out about the what the rule of the universe is. So that doesn't mean necessarily that oh, it's only true for our locality, but we're trying to find out what's the ultimate kind of rule of the universe, right?
What are all
But
the rules, right?
right, but
Another thing that I was thinking about is that consider that what science will be in 1,000 years.
a
It
lot
will be
more
different,
different, yeah. We found out a lot more about, I mean, just think about the scientific advancement for the last 50 years, right? There's a lot of stuff and it's still happening all the time. We're just not aware of it because we're not scientists and we're not reading all the peer-reviewed papers. But people who do that, who are in the community of science, they're doing that every day. They're finding out new stuff about whether that's medicine, whatever field of science there is, there's always advancement. So imagine, yeah, 1,000 years after, it will be a lot more than what we
and
know now.
so, but you think that, I mean, yeah, I guess we would both think that the science that will be known 1,000 years from now exists right now,
That's my,
right?
because my like, okay, this is my rationale, right? Like, okay,
But then
let's,
that's kind of akin to magic because if we're saying like in 1,000 years we'll find a way to have replicators and generate food out of molecules, that is essentially saying anything can be,
it's
and we're just
probably
trying to
possible.
reconstruct that knowledge.
You just don't have the systems, because I keep thinking, right? Like the fact that we can again go back to the car example. We made combustion engines. We're using petroleum and these properties of these thing oil. We're able to make this thing run, right? Like it's the heat, the force of that explosion that's caused by the gasoline in the engine are creating these pressures that allow the piston to work. Like these are properties of the world. That
Mhm.
doesn't mean they don't exist before. It's just we didn't have the thing to make it do that
Right. So then
in that way.
technology is just more and more elaborate ways to manipulate the just matter and energy according to the laws of physics that we discover.
Yes, because the thing is, we're finding okay, knowledge is one thing. To be able to use the information in which we can utilize it for something, but it's the humans that are manipulating the nobody says you should do this or that, right? But we're seeing, oh, you can
Right.
combine these things. What happens
Where
if you
the
do this and that?
agents,
So we're causing the discoveries to happen because the facts are the facts, right? Like,
by
okay,
the
these
fact
are the
of that we're looking. Because if you think about where all of these advances start, they still start in imagination. Somebody has a theory or something, or they had a weird dream.
yeah.
But that is crazy. That means it's literally just,
What if, right?
it
It's like
comes from imagination. You could just say that because
it's
by all intents and
so
purposes, that's what's been happening.
yeah, so the state of, let's just say, okay, the law of physics or whatever already exists and has been the same since the start of the universe,
Yeah.
right? But we are discovering that, right? So basically, this has always been true. But as the observer, if you don't have some ways to measure it or form a theory of knowledge or of putting these in categories or kind of finding out by experiment, because nobody can tell you that this is the speed of light or is what, you're only observing things and you see patterns and then you find out and then you record them. And then over time, you're like, oh, that's the pattern. That thing always happens. So, okay, that's kind of tell us that these are the anchors to which we base our lives on because this always happens. Like the sun always rises and set, rise from the east and set from the
Right.
west. So
All those things are already in motion the way they are, according to just forces existing prior to
yeah,
maybe like the Big Bang, right? Whatever
right,
propelled everything forward, which is also fun to think about because that's kind of what everything is, right? It's just Big Bang inertia.
right,
Everything since then has been moving according to certain laws of physics,
right.
and now it's just rotating that way, and forces stabilize in their orbits, and there's more or less stable gravitational forces binding all of this soup
Yeah,
together, right?
and that's what we start observing, right? From Galileo to, you know, all the other Haley or all these great scientists, Newton, they just observe stuff. It's like, oh, we can see planets, we can see these things are on the the night sky, the stars are in position, they're always there, and I mean they do change according to but they start finding out, oh, we find out planets. There's this thing, the sun, what the sun actually. Like, we start finding them out, and now we can actually send aircraft to go there, spacecraft to go there and see in detail what they look like. So that's the process of discovering, oh, this is how the world is. Wow, that's crazy. And we live on a planet. We live on a ball of Earth,
But this is where my question keeps returning to the fact that how do we know that it existed before we started looking?
Well,
Kind of don't.
we don't, but
I guess we know now, we kind of have this, but it's still just it's a theory, right? Even the fact that the universe's light has been traveling from the Big Bang for all those 13 something billion years, we are technically seeing it. We have, but that's where my mind starts becoming hazy, because essentially it's like the universe exists as in time, like this light that's traveling since the beginning of Big Bang,
yeah,
it still is traveling through the universe.
yeah,
So the stars that we see, they're long dead, they're long gone, like for billions
right,
of years, but we
yeah,
still see their light traveling through the universe. Like that part just completely
yeah.
boggles my mind, because
I know, right? But the fact that people found out
it almost
about
means like there's
this,
some kind of, it's a phantom of things keeps traveling on throughout the infinity forever, because the universe is also expanding.
we don't know. I mean, that seems to be what everything suggests, right? From all the data that we found out about these things about the astrophysics. But
But then, you know what that would mean is that this light that exists, for which we can study also, and from which we can read properties about those stars that are long dead, it almost seems like holographic information about what was in the universe is still there. It's just traveling in the form of light through it. So it kind of, in that form, it exists forever.
I guess because because if you're not looking at the, let's say, a distant
Because
star,
it's
right?
information, right? It's
Right.
not just random light. Like
We
if
are
some
looking,
star,
we're looking at our locality at that star. But imagine if you move to a different locality, looking at that star, because of your let's just say if the other, okay,
you'll see a different
we are observer
configuration of
A
information, right?
and there's observer B. The observer B is closer to the star that we're observing. So what they will see is a lot different. So it is kind of like this whole thing being captured, like I just say in amber, right? The whole time scale is being captured in amber. Where from here, and we start seeing it from this locality of it. So yeah, you're right. I think it's like
You kind of see some kind of slices, right, of that information from a certain time period traveling throughout space in the form of light. But that's where I'm saying it's a hologram,
you're
because
right.
if you
So
can
it's
imagine a hologram as a 3D light structure, that's kind of what light seems, and it's just it travels at an insane speeds.
so the all the time it's permanently, what would you say, like at all stages of that is permanently captured, like it exists, right?
Right.
you can
That's what
you
I'm
can
saying. It
find,
kind of
right,
exists eternally
you
then.
can find whichever time frame. Like I imagine like a video, you can go back and forth and
Any
scrub it
frame, right?
and scrub it at any so this is true in space and time. So you can be at any space at any time, you can find what it looks like according to that distance, right? So it's all captured and it's still being captured as the universe expands. That's my understanding of it, right? So yeah, everything is being, so yeah, that's why people suggest that, oh, maybe it is a hologram. Maybe this is all just like projected onto the, it could be the reality. But why? That's the eternal question. Nobody understands, why even be something like that. Even for me, the fact that we live on a planet, it blows my mind, right?
Because you can also you can ask this question infinitely, like why a planet? This is why, why is it round? Why is it this way? But which to me it reminds me that, well, say like a God appeared and you asked him that, the answer would be like, because like that's just the way I was able to like design it and put it together. What do you mean why? It's like a creation, When you make a piece of art, you can only ask why so many times before it kind of becomes this. It was a spontaneous, inspirational movement. It's not like why did you choose this specific brush made out of this specific animal? At a certain point, like it stops mattering. Wasn't a conscious decision, so to say.
Maybe there is no why, because when you ask why, you're seeking a specific answer from the utilitarian viewpoint, because you're asking why is it this way, so that it's, how do I put it, like,
no, you're still looking just for the cause, like what preceded that decision, what defined that certain decision or
but that
attribute.
is based on the premise that one would think that
it's based on just how like everything has a cause. That's what how our whole world is based on, right? Nothing happens without a cause. If a planet is round,
right,
science explain it why it's the case, right? That's just how gravity works and how
right,
matter shapes throughout long periods of time. So there is an answer, But when you keep asking that question, why, inevitably you enter those unknowable areas where there is no answer.
Yeah, I'm just trying to unfold this in my head, right? So of course, the stuff I'm saying might not make much sense because I'm trying to make sense of it too. But you're right. Yeah, it's the idea that yes, there is the chain, the causal chain. Like that's how we fundamentally understand it.
From that standpoint, you can always ask a question why, but this is where it ends. Like it ends in because God.
Because that's the easiest answer you can.
No, because that's the only answer that you can arrive at. Because that's the only one that stops this infinite regression
again,
of questions.
For me, it's still like, oh well, yeah, that's convenient. I mean,
but what else would it be? Like it. I mean, convenient as opposed to what?
But yes,
there's nothing else.
There is nothing. Right, you're right. It is the most, not only the most convenient, but also like, yeah, that's about the only thing you can say about it, right?
And what does it mean, the most convenient? What is it?
Meaning that what if there is some other way that make it true that we just don't know? It's not God, it's something else. It doesn't have to be ultimate. I mean, I don't know, right?
I think that's even the magic idea of that term. Essentially, the term puts everything under that umbrella.
Yes.
It's something that you don't know how it works and why and how it's done that. Essentially, it puts it at God. It's
and God could mean anything. And God could mean anything, right? It could mean any sort of, I mean, obviously it's something of higher intelligence or some kind of power is higher than us. That's the idea that it's bigger than us. But that's about it. But we just use the word God to, explain it.
That.
So different faiths have different idea what that is, right? What God is.
Not really. This is where, like, when you study all the religions, they still, a lot of them point into the same thing. They're trying to describe the same thing.
Right, but their manifestation is different, right? Like their idea of what it's actually, I mean.
Not really. It's all out of this world, shapeless, formless. It's something that is beyond this world, which means that you can't, it's like the Tao, essentially. You can't give it any properties. Okay. You can't. Right. It's kind of like the consciousness itself. This is where it gets trippy, because by all these explorations, like, for what I personally arrive at is that God essentially is the space itself, is the reality itself.
Right. Yeah, that's the one way to.
Which is a trippy idea, right? But that's the one that makes the most sense to me out of everything that I studied, which, okay, maybe we'll arrive there later. Let me see what else we had here. So, yeah, we started from this initial skepticism about reality, right? Which was, we both agree that there's no definitive answer that could be satisfactorily explained by any specific system or tool, right?
Because I think it's all belief, right? You can believe in the
Right.
scientific method.
Exactly.
You can believe in the materialist method, or you can believe in the spiritual aspect as well. I mean, you just whichever you want to believe, it's all up to the individual to make that assumption and decision.
Exactly, which is it's kind of the end of that I wanted to jump to, but it's crazy that you're seeing it right at this point. That
it's
it's everything is
almost
like a framework that through which you can look at things. Everything is a little lens.
Which is kind of what frustrates me because it's like, well, first of all, it seems very obvious that this is I mean, yeah, this is the most obvious kind of thing you can arrive at. But it's also, it doesn't explain anything. It's like, okay, yeah, it's all belief. Okay, well, but that sucks. You still kind of have to, because the thing is, we can have so much delusions about the world, right? Like we can think of it in a certain way and it could be wrong. It could be different because the things are so complex that we don't know.
But I think essentially that's the tricky. What if that was an actual property of reality? Let me explain. Essentially, what if what you, for whatever reason, believe is true? I mean, we kind of touched upon it in our Squanch Master talks, but it's to the extent I kind of wanted to see how that can be balanced to a practical degree, because it's obviously not, there's a limit to it. It's not like, but maybe it's about the technology of a belief. Maybe you don't know how to believe properly, and some of the believing you just do unconsciously.
Yeah.
And maybe that unconscious believing is what we consider living in our stable reality. But what if one discovered a way to consciously plug into that believing process? This is something that I've been trying to explore and understand, because there are many kind of inferences that is the case in the spiritual community, but I still don't understand it. They call it like things like resonance and attunement, kind of like you attuning yourself to a certain picture of the world, and then the world kind of starts behaving more and more similar to what you're believing about it. But that's where it's like, I don't even know how to bridge it with, because at that point, your reality is not objective really anymore.
See, that's why
You're only comparing what you're seeing to your subjective reality, and you completely disregard the fact that there may be an objective reality, because essentially it stops being relevant to you. You stop caring that what other people are thinking or imagining. It's only about you and your belief and your
I see where
perception.
that is coming from. I think I need to, for my understanding of it, right? I need to kind of break it down, because I'm not saying that is exactly wrong. But when I hear you say that, my initial reaction is these people are crazy. But now that I think about it, they're not exactly wrong. Why? Because this is how I understand it. Okay, according to what they're saying, and they're right in the way that, yes, everything is subjective. According to science, even according to science, there is almost, I mean, one could argue, but I think, in my belief, is that yes, everything is subjective, because according to Einstein's relativity, that is true. Meaning there is no objective state in which, because what do you mean by objective? Like where are you measuring that? Who is having that
how is it even defined?
Right, because you are of different locality and what you observe can be different. But that doesn't mean, the only thing is that it doesn't mean that the rule doesn't apply to you, right? So let's just say in the universe, right, the speed of light is the rule. Meaning it doesn't matter where you are in the universe, it's still true. It's still the same speed. So that's the overarching kind of.
I mean, I've even heard that being challenged. I'm not sure if I'll be able to recall that experiment.
Well,
but
some
essentially,
people
there's a theoretical experiment that's saying something like, if a mirror is flying at the speed of light, and the photon
reflected on top
reflects
of it,
in it, essentially the reflection would have to be faster than the speed of light. I think that might be it. Yeah, that sounds crazy, isn't it?
Right. Somebody
How
to
would that
prove
work?
that. Somebody will need to prove that. I mean, I don't
But
think
that's impossible, right? We can't accelerate things to the speed of light.
well, yeah.
I mean, I
But
guess we can observe the
but
actual light, but
okay, so what I'm trying to understand from what that's thing, it makes sense to me because okay, what they're saying is okay, everything is subjective, which is true. But to me, according to how I understand it, it is true. Even scientifically, it's subjective. Meaning that what is the quote unquote
what is the
uh,
extent of that subjectivity?
what's the quote unquote objectivity that most people talk
Right,
about is the common core, right? The idea that we agree on certain things, society, or
right.
so when they are going with the subjective, it's more about, okay, I'm not gonna go with the consensus. Meaning that because experiences
It's
are
just a matter of
subjective,
perspective then, because you can always
yeah.
choose a perspective, even in science, I believe, right? The scale on which things operate, the laws differ there. The science already discovered that, I believe, that there's certain laws that
Well,
apply only at certain scales, right? Like
it
the
right.
quantum scale, the
Yes,
observer effect only applies there.
the
So what does
class
that mean?
the classics physics in the bigger picture works, but it does not work on the microscopic or even lower scale, right?
The
So
quantum
yes,
level.
quantum level, right? So yeah, that's still a quandary that scientists can't really reconcile, right? Meaning that, well, yeah, things could happen that in ways that we don't understand how or why, but it somehow exists in both worlds. So
That's
it's
essentially the proof, if you want to say, of this unorderly world that we're living in. The fact that these rules are not as consistent,
right.
which means
Or at
that
least we haven't
what if
found
they're,
out.
yeah,
Be-
we found some specific
be-
examples and kind of where it happens and
because
how.
you know Einstein was trying to find this universal equation that basically solved this problem.
Mhm.
Basically, can answer all the questions from quantum mechanics up to the grander scale of the
Right,
universe,
to
but
tie
he
everything
couldn't find
together.
it. He tried to do it, but he couldn't find it because it will completely be like it will be like a cop out. You're trying to make something work in which it doesn't. So that's false. Then that's why he didn't pursue it. It's like, yep, I can't explain it. This is all I can tell you is the relativity. That's it. And
Yeah.
then I can't find out why the quantum mechanic works that way. I don't know. So that's where
I
we
think
at,
like
right?
at that level, like when people were talking about solving those problems, it's almost like solving God. It's the same exact problem, right? It's just from a scientific angle. You're trying to reconcile something. You're
Yeah.
trying to find like, well, how does it all like freaking work together from beginning to end, right?
And
The
you
whole
can't
thing,
find out. No,
the
it
big
doesn't.
enchilada.
Yeah. But there's no, I mean, nobody have figured, okay, they still have this kind of disconnection.
Because I think if we like for anybody to figure it out would be to look under the God's skirt. It would
Mm.
be essentially like not allowed. You
Yeah.
can't do that. It's
Unacceptable.
it's no, you don't do that around here.
Unacceptable.
Yeah. Okay. So
So
this
okay,
is perfect.
so what we're saying, what I was saying is, I can understand that kind of mentality because my initial reaction is, who are these crazy
Mm.
people thinking
But
they're?
they're not. Yeah, they're not saying anything crazy.
It is not, yeah. Because if you try, if like, how I understood it is like, okay, my initial reaction is these people are crazy. They're so in their head that they don't even acknowledge the common sort of consensus on knowledge and experience and what have you. But then, if you think about it, well, everything is subjective, right? So what they're saying is, well, yeah, live the way that you kind of in your experiences of how you want your life to unfold. So it's
Yes,
not about because you still even if you accept the common core, like say all the society's rules and you all accept it, that is still your individual agency to accept that as your belief.
exactly. It still
So it's
goes
still
back to you
subjective.
having to accept it.
It's still subjective, right? You're
Right.
subjectively accepting that these core tenets are the rule of the so whether that's society, that's science, or whatever, right? You can choose or not choose to believe it, but you're still on your own path because you are
Yeah.
a unique individual, unique aspect of consciousness that you have this specific and unique way of
Exactly.
experiencing life. So
You're this unique ray of
so they're right, but the
consciousness.
caveat is, I guess, how you will say it, because when you first explain that, I was pissed off about that. It's like, these people are crazy. Like they disrespect everything we have found out about the world and thinking that they're in their own head. You know, what different does that make than the people who are just mentally ill and crazy?
There's definitely a balance and extent to this thing. I really want to explore this because even just from for example, like we will talk to about this before, the sovereign citizens, right? Like
Right. I
why
don't accept
isn't
your
their reality aligned? You know, like why are there clashes with the objective world with actual societal rules? I mean, but to them, like they're literally such people that they're don't recognize the authority to such an extent that they do perceive themselves to be like oppressed by all these rules, and they believe it. But this is where it's weird, because do you want to experience this conflict and oppression, and this is why you're believing in it, or you're literally erroneous in all your assessment and you are
so
clashing with the world and creating problems for yourself, right?
yeah.
Which is the primary, which is the cause here?
So according so okay, so what you're saying, what was the name of this? You're explaining these people's belief are called what? Resonance?
No, let's see.
It's a
I forget.
Okay, it
I'll need
doesn't
to
matter.
look it up. Yeah.
All I'm saying, I'm just referencing to like that thinking that okay, everything is subjective and it's all about your own subjective reality. I think that is a theory that's true, but in practice, you have to contend with the world that you are living in, right? We all live in a country that has these structures of rules. We all pay taxes, right? We all are forced to be in this kind of society, right? And if you go against the grain, well, I'm sorry, you're just gonna be having so much hard time because other people don't accept your reality, okay? Because this is how the real world
The
works in a
only
way.
way to test this is to test this yourself.
Yes. So you can go against that. Like imagine if these sovereign citizens, not to say that they're wrong in their thinking, like, well, I just live my reality. I want to live my well, that's true enough, but then you will come into conflict with the world at large because this is the world that you're living in which if you do that according to how you want to live, well, somebody else is gonna come and say no, right? It's not this is how things are, right? I mean, what can you do about that? Like if you say, oh, I don't believe in taxes, I don't pay taxes, well, you're gonna be in jail. Some people will force you to be in jail for not paying your taxes. That's the reality that will happen. If you want to, if you don't want that to happen, well, there's not that many ways you can do it other than pay your taxes, right? You will be compelled to do so. So just because your subjective reality is kind of true to you, that doesn't mean that you are not dealing with the actual physical limitations or things that exist in the world, I suppose.
Yes, but this is where this is the crux, the main point is that if you believe that you have this kind of relationship with your subjective reality where you are somehow able to influence it with your attitudes and beliefs, it can loop in such a way that even with all those laws and rules existing in the world, it will not occur to you. You will just never, because it's possible. You understand that, right? Because you can right now, you can sell everything in your possession, get a van, and go traveling around the world until your money runs out.
Okay.
But then it doesn't mean that you will become homeless and die in 2 months, you know?
No.
It may happen that you will live your best life ever and everything will go your way. That's what the main point is.
Go away only as far as how much you can escape society.
But those are details. And the big point in this knowledge is that you don't worry about the details. This is where it gets like
But
all
then it's
mystical and
like, okay,
spiritual.
but then it's like,
Essentially, you trust the details to God.
okay, but then what's the purpose of, okay, yeah, this is a big topic.
This is
But
why
I'm
it's
saying,
it's fun conversation, because it really cuts to the core of what do you want from reality?
right,
What is
exactly.
the best thing that
What's
you could
the,
possibly receive from it?
which I don't know. To me, I don't have no clue what that looks like, you know? But
This is
yes, you
where
can do that. You can, yeah, of course, you
I
can,
believe
that's
this
the
is where
choice.
it's the most valuable kind of spiritual exercises for you to really define it, because I believe is that as soon as you start defining it, because it's a complex process, you start creating meaning structures for why it needs to exist, according to you.
Yes, but there's one thing that kind of comes to my mind, that the problem is you don't live in a vacuum though. You do,
Why does that matter to you?
because that's the okay, because the thing is, I don't think
I'm giving you carte blanche. I'm asking, what would you do if you were God in human form? There are no excuses left. You're God in human form.
well, all I know is eventually
Essentially, it forces you to come up with a version of heaven that you would accept. As I
I
would
don't think
love
look,
to live in that.
I don't think okay, this is an interesting thing. I feel like eventually I'll be bored,
Uh,
right?
okay, why?
This is like it's like that show
Bored due to what?
is like that show the Good Place, right? It's
Good
like the
place.
idea that
That's
eventually,
why that show is so good,
right,
because
that's what they did,
it seems
right?
so realistic.
You got to end it. You got to
Yeah.
end it. Even if you're God, you can do whatever you like. You can do all the things that you
So
ever
I'm
wanted.
proposing you. I'm giving you godhood, and your immediate response is you're gonna off yourself.
Seppuku, man. That's it. Avoid all the, just
That's your dream. Are you
because
okay, bro?
you had the question. Okay, but if I'm God, what if I kill? What if I, do I
You're
die or
going all the
no?
way to the end. No, I get it. I get it. You're cutting through.
All the
Like
BS.
let's get it over with.
Let's see what happens after that.
But you're skipping all the fun. Wouldn't you want to arrive at that point naturally? Wouldn't there are still things that you want to experience?
So the
For sure.
question is time based. What kind of experience do you want? Right?
Yeah.
It's more like, okay,
Because you can kill yourself right now. That's
yeah, you could just
not a
get to the
problem.
end.
Yeah.
Right to the end. Or you can have this adventure and then you do it. Oh, that's the
Yes.
kind of so
because you yourself told me before that it's all about the story, right? It's all about a really well played game campaign.
but see the thing is, but that means this is why how I understand the Zen masters, like they're still returning back to the world. They're not gonna be like, I'm gonna isolate myself. I'm gonna just completely live. But you're not gonna be able to live the best life that you have just by yourself, right?
But you're just saying these as these stories about someone else. I'm returning yourself back to you. Why do you concern yourself with what others do and
I'm
how
not.
they do
It's
it?
not about considering about that. It's about community and things that you're human, right? You're born to be in a group. That's how our evolution is kind of made us this way. We are
No,
not.
you're still going away from the question of that you're God in human form. No rules apply to you. The only thing that applies to you is what would you like reality to be. So you can't fall back on
I
what
can't
the
even
rules
define
already
that.
are.
I can't even. I don't even know if you're giving that power. I don't even know what I do with it. It's like, well,
That's
okay.
the question. I think
So
you have to figure it out.
I no longer need to struggle for survival, right? Obviously, you're
Yeah.
God. You can survive whatever.
Yeah, you get to define
You
it,
don't have to
what
eat
the
food
rules
if
are.
you don't like.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the problem is, I only am a human. I only have my knowledge of the world and the only things that I know about. So that means I'm very limited. What do you mean
But
by
there
God? If I'm God, do I know all the secrets to the universe? But even then, I'm a human right now. I can't comprehend what the secret of the universe
I'll give you
is.
an example. There are yogis exist in the world, right? Who completely bend the definitions of what humans have to do or don't have to do. There are real yogis in Tibet who are meditating for weeks on end without having to
Okay.
eat or sleep or go to the bathroom. So we already know that humans are able to bend that level of needs, even like survival level of needs, right? There are yogis who are able to control the temperature of their bodies, who don't need clothes. They can sit
Okay.
in snow and do stuff. So there are no limitations. We've already proven it even on a human level, which means that it's already possible. We already know that
Okay.
if you wanted to, for example, an example, a God in human form could sit and just experience bliss 24/7 with having nothing to do but just experiencing that bliss, like really feeling it on no end. And such meditations and yogis also exist right now.
I don't know if I want that.
Why not?
Too much of a good thing can be a bad thing, you know?
But how? Why would you decide that? You see, like, you get to choose. If you were to choose that, it doesn't become a bad thing. If it's essentially, this is what every spiritual person is after. It's the Satchitananda, is the eternal consciousness bliss. It's just a final ecstasy which doesn't get old and doesn't.
Sounds too good to be true to me.
But this
Maybe
is the
I'm
problem.
the skeptic. I guess
Essentially,
I'm the
this is the
skeptic. Yeah.
trouble of the inquisitive skeptical mind that just
Yeah.
doesn't allow you
It doesn't allow
to
me to accept it.
experience the
Yeah.
ultimate bliss. It's like, no, I gotta suffer a bit more. Oh, I gotta work
Yeah.
this shitty job for a few more years. I don't deserve it yet.
Because I don't know. If you ask me honestly, it's like I don't know how I feel about that. It's like, okay, but it's true. The skeptical mind saying, well, how do you
Isn't
know
that
that's the
what
it's
you could ultimately want? Like, why do anything else in the world? Every day you do the same thing. You're getting some pleasure. That's the only reason you're going on and doing these things, right? You're receiving pleasure every day, right? And you're going for it consciously. You're making good food, you're taking hot showers, you know? So what if you put that to the max and like, all right, the ultimate pleasure that doesn't end. Why not?
that's a choice, yeah.
So
I don't know how I
you'd
feel
want it?
about it. Maybe I'm too lazy to do the work though. Cause it is work, right? You gotta meditate. You gotta be like, you gotta restart everything basically, right? How you think, how you feel, how you
Well,
basically
the mechanics of it, they're yeah, there are different factors in there, but
it's definitely
it's
not
definitely
easy, right? It's not like, oh, I can just choose to do it and then boom, I'm
it.
there. Like it's
Yeah, I mean,
you gotta meditate
you gotta try it.
years, right? For years, your whole life, essentially.
At this point, I've heard all kinds of, like, there are a lot of the experiences spontaneous that is just happening to people. I encounter people on Reddit like all the time that are just like, I never knew anything about it, and then suddenly boom, like they have an intense spiritual experience out of nowhere. So crazy stuff.
Yeah,
So it can even
I've heard.
happen that way.
I don't know. I hear people talk about ghosts and like even these things like they say it as it is for real, like for real, bro, for real.
Well,
Just trust me.
if it I know if it
It
happens to
could
you and
be.
you see it, then you kind
It
of
could
don't have a
be.
choice
So
but
I
to.
am not saying that that's not true, like where it can't be true, but I'm just like, well, I haven't seen it, so that's not my world. I'm not saying it's not true, but it's you are your environment, right? You kind of your world review defines who you are or how you go about the world. And if that certain thing is
To me, that's what all this kind of spirituality is all about, is you're looking at all this programming and you're deciding consciously whether you want to inherit it or you want to explore something else.
yeah, but I think it still comes down to what does that look like the in details, right? How would you arrange your life? I just say if you wanted to do that, then yeah, you're gonna have to give up everything that you have right now, and then consciously go after that sort of way of life, which means you're gonna be cutting a lot of ties. You're gonna be completely revamping everything, right? Of your relationship between your family, friends, and yourself, or how you deal with the world itself, right? Because that's a complete new way of looking at the world, and you're gonna have to kind of it is an upheaval. You basically change everything, right? That has to be done for you to kind of embrace this idea of this 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 how you want to live your life
Mm-hmm.
in this spiritual sense, right? To me, I don't know how I would even maybe that's just attachment. I have too much attachment. That's why
Mm.
it's even as bad as it could be, I'm still too attached to it. Because otherwise there's no reference point, right? Because it is kind of like a new world
Yeah,
that you
this
have
is
to
the
step
part that
into.
that is, as I don't know like how it happens, because as I said, it happens to some people out of nowhere. Some people come to this gradually, and to some people it just doesn't happen. So, but you never know. Maybe it doesn't happen to you until it does. But the
Right. So
fact
it's the
that,
choice
yeah, I'm
though.
just curious
It's
about your perspective. Essentially, you are comfortable with the way your reality is as it
I'm
is.
comfortable with the suffering. I'm comfortable with whatever this is.
Yeah.
It's fine. I'm lazy. I guess that's the only That's one way to explain it. Because that's why I'm not. Why am I not? Because look, if
That
this
kind of like,
if this thing is so great that everybody should want it, why don't I want it? When you explain to me, oh look, this is like some
yeah, what's wrong with you?
yeah, what's wrong with me, right? What's wrong with you not wanting this stuff?
But even like this laziness, like I know we joke, but I also thought about it before because the laziness essentially precludes the whole problem of from arising, from essentially if there was, I mean there is, there is a better way for you to live. I don't know. For
Right.
example,
Yeah.
you could live in a mansion or something, right? So there is a better, more comfortable, more enticing and more inviting forms of reality that you could live in. You are not, myself as well, if you're not motivated to achieve that, like, okay, I really want that comfort level, then there's no problem because you just don't want it,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, it's not that I'm not driven by these type of incentive. We are as humans. We
But
all
some people are really driven to
are
the
really
point where
driven.
like they get it. They actually get it.
Like they do all the hard work to get to that, right?
Yeah.
But to me, I'm like, my level of striving only goes so far. I'm like, if it's beyond, if it's become sunk cost fallacy to me, then it's like, no, not worth it. You know?
Okay, this is where it's also interesting for me. I mean, this is like a complete tangent, but I really like that we are going there. So we'll return to some of these other topics on the mind map later because this is really fun to explore. Yeah, like what I'm curious then is what determines that level of it's the balance of laziness and comfort, because definitely there's a level of discomfort that you'll reach that you'll be motivated to solve, right?
Right.
Like you won't want to be homeless.
Yeah.
So
There's
there's
level to that.
yeah. I wonder what determines that. It's got to be, I guess, somehow linked with your ability
It's
to.
different realities of, see here, this is the thing, right? Like I know some people are very driven because they've been poor before. They
Mhm.
understand how bad it could be. That's what gave them the motivation. I think the problem with me is, see, we all become what we were, or what happened to us, right? So our past really inform a lot about how we are. And part of it is like, in my history, I never lived in poverty. Not that I'm not that my family are rich or anything. I'm just saying we were never at the level of like poverty, where like you were just almost like don't even know what if you have food tomorrow. We're not at that level ever. So meaning that growing up, maybe I have it too good. Like it was like not great, not terrible. Right. So it's the kind of thing that informs how I behave, I suppose. I think that's a big part of it. If I were from a poor family,
Okay,
I'm
that's
sure I'm
interesting.
like,
That means, yeah, you would have an experiential representation of what that reality is like, and you would want to avoid it at all costs.
yeah, that's an incentive, right? It's a form of incentive that way. So yeah, so basically like I think for every individual, any problem you think you have psychologically, it's really what happened back then. Something informs how you feel or how you behave, right? It's the whole behavior psychology. So it's really, it's pretty much true. Like how you feel about certain things are definitely like that kind of worldview are formed when you were young, right? Is all these things feeding into you. This is how you process your reality, and this is the level in which your response to anything is predicated and informed by what happened to you before, right? So we all have this pattern. We create this pattern, right? This is the reason why every individual is different, because how they process things or how they became the way they are very different, right? So that's how they process it so different. And therefore they're different kind of lives. People live in many different ways. So I guess the reason why I look at this thing in this way, I respond in this way is because yeah, I don't have that much incentive, or at least I never grow to accept
Uh,
that incentive in that way.
There's a saying, I'm not sure if it's just restricted to Russian, but essentially it goes something like a monkey that hasn't tasted anything sweeter than a banana. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But if you did experience, I mean, and that is not true. For example, I've been in luxurious homes and environments before. I mean, it looks amazing, right? It looks like I look at it and I'm like, Oh, wow. To live in that type of space would be a completely different life, just even for your mental health,
Right.
to have like spaciousness inside a home that you live in like 24/7, is it's definitely something to be desired. But at no point it affected me to the point like, oh,
I must have it.
I, I now must like work myself into the ground
Well,
for the
somebody will
chance
do
of
that.
it because yeah, I don't know. Like I also start thinking about like, well, if you put that as your goal, and then your strategy is then to do whatever is necessary just to get money to achieve that thing that you can get with it, you're gonna end up doing a lot of stuff for years that you not necessarily enjoying or liking.
Yeah.
Uh, this is where it's debatable because maybe the motivation will kind of pay for itself. It will provide you with all the it will provide with all the meaning structure for you to do all the difficult and unpleasant work. But I've never really found it to be the case.
Yeah.
Even in my early days when I was starting a career, it definitely felt more of like a necessity. Like, yeah, you need financial support to do anything in the world. It wasn't towards some specific goal. And I still was fairly motivated just by that alone because I knew, well, yeah, there's works
Yeah.
that needs to be done to get paid. And if you do these more difficult jobs, you can get more money.
This is this is why people have different incentives, levels of incentives that they respond to, different level of desires, different level of, yes, for some people it's all about that. Like, oh, money, 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 that's it. But for others it's like, yeah, it's not good enough, right? Having even if you live in those mansions and do all that thing, it's still the question is the same. And I think
Right. What do you get from
what you
that?
gotta do,
At a certain time, it becomes like a
it
baseline
gets
of
old.
certain.
It gets
Yeah.
old too, right? So that's what I'm saying. Too much of a good thing can be bad as well because you have no baseline anymore, right? It's like you only desire things that you don't have. But once you have it, you're like, okay, now what, right? So it's never ending. This is why low desire should be the goal. Like I mean, even that is a caveat. You don't want to have no desire because your life can be terrible if you don't have nothing that you want, right? So I just think that look, concepts and ideas are all great, or how you kind of analyze things in your head about how a certain way of living is good or bad. But it's one thing to conceptualize that and another to actually live it, right? You have to live the life that fits you, right? Because we all have different values. And certainly we accept certain premise and we reject certain premise. And it's really it's up to the individual subjectively. What do you want out of it? Like what we're saying here. Yeah, apparently I'm just not motivated enough for all of these things that kind of what a lot of people chase after, right? And I can understand them too. It's not that I don't, like that. I'm not judging anybody. It's just that everyone should follow their own instinct, I
Then
guess.
what would you say? What motivates you? Like, what is your motivation?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't think I can even put into word what really motivates me. I mean, beyond the
Hmm.
basic animalistic sort of like, oh, I must survive, then everything else seems illusion. All these are illusions. Imagine if I become whatever, right? All these titles in the world doesn't mean anything really. You can be the greatest at this and that, but I suppose it's kind of internal how you process that, right? Some people chase greatness because they just want it. They just think that's a better way to be, and that they could be proud of certain things. But it's a very great question because I don't know if I know myself. Like, what the hell do I want beyond the kind of basic stuff? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just that mediocre where I don't have any aspirations beyond. We all have a little bit of talent here and there. Everybody does. But even then, I'm like, okay, even if I become great at this thing, does it really, uh, you know? Part of me obviously want these things, but I'm also not sure what will happen after I achieve it because you don't have any blueprints. Maybe that's the whole. Maybe that should be the allure of chasing a goal because it's like, well, yeah, we'll figure out what happens then. All right, we'll see what happens. It's like live or let live.
Yeah, it's kind of like an opportunity for self-discovery. But yeah, good questions to think about because I think that's where it's always valuable, right? You get to define what a lot of these things are. Like even if you don't know what the world objectively might be, things like what motivates me, what I want, what I want to happen next, regardless of how feasible or not feasible they are, I think they're important to define because that's where it all starts, right? If you don't start with it, then it definitely will
Yeah,
never happen.
because see, this goes back to what we're discussing, right? The idea of knowledge and the fact that we had this discussion all about science versus belief and all this, but at the very baseline of this is just what we just said. We're trying to figure things out. We're having these sets of data that we're analyzing, and we're finding, oh, okay, this is our reality. Okay, let's find out more about it. This is what life is kind of unfolding, right? How life unfolds is that you don't know what will happen, so you figure it out one step at a time. So that goes both for the process of scientific discovery is the same as you would discover what your own meaning of life is. It's like exploration. Okay, we found out about this and this and this, and do you want this? Do you want that? Is this something that we can make into a coherent system or what have you, right? So this is how the modern world grew to be. It's the constantly group of people finding out about different aspects, different things, and they're improving upon old systems and things. And this is what happens. You can't stop people from being curious about the world, about how they want to live in the world, and different incentives, right? I mean, economy. Why are we in all this? We're building all this stuff as a structure. Give us a lot of benefits, but there's also a lot of cons as well. And every nation and people are trying to figure out what that is, right? Because if you break down the modern world, is this system upon system that are based on the technological advancement that we have built, right? From the steam engine to the computer technologies, the networks that we have now, internet, everything is becoming as things are being more connected, and we're building that base to become the next whatever this is. We got to space, right? We want to go to another planet. We have all these other aspirations, and people are working their lives building these things. So it's anything goes, but it's just all about discovery, and that's part of the fun, right? Like you get to discover what you want to do, both as a person, as nations, as different communities, and that's what life is. It's kind of all kinds of things are happening, right? It's sort of chaotic, but it also has its own underlying logic as well, from each individual to a group of people. So
Yeah. Should we take a look at some of the philosophical thought experiments in reality?
yeah.
Just some of it we've kind of we're doing. Let's see what we have here. Oh yeah, just the simple fact that you can't absolutely distinguish waking life from a vivid dream. There is no proof that you can provide right now that you're not dreaming. There isn't an experiment or or definitive way to prove that. How crazy is that?
That's part of the problem. Well, not problem, but part of the reality, that the fact that this is how the limits of your perception, right? Your brain process the dream in the same way that you process the conscious aspects of it as well. So it's
Yeah,
like,
it
yeah,
might
there
it
is
might be the same
in
type of reality.
right, only something about it that you only have those during when you are not awake. So that's the only difference that we can, like, oh, you went to sleep and you were dreaming and then you woke up. But yeah, you can extend that to the whole of life. This is why we have these in the arts and the culture, like, oh, the Matrix, or the a dream. Life is a dream, and I mean, yeah, it's this is the problem where it is too ambiguous to us, right? It's like, okay, yes, we can say that and we can think of it like that, but then what's real and what's not, and that for good or for bad, it's just too confusing for us. It's like, oh yeah, there's no, how do you distinguish that,
Yeah, but so all of these are kind of designed to point that out, that it's very difficult to understand what even real is and what we consider reality. There's also this brain in a vat hypothesis, which is kind of the idea similar to the Matrix, right? That's what they had there,
Yeah.
is that you may be just locked in a pod somewhere, and then you just electrical signals are being triggering this illusion to you. So that could be, again, we can't prove that that's not the case, because we would somehow need to escape the Matrix and get into the real world, but we have no idea of how that could happen.
That is.
Yeah. There's also solipsism, of course, is that the fact that you can only have access to your consciousness, and you don't know whether other people are actually experiencing anything. You might be the only consciousness in the whole world. You personally don't have a proof for any other case. The qualia problem, the fact that it's the subjective experience is yours only, you can't compare it to anybody else's, and you can't, it's not verifiable. You don't know what the other person is seeing, feeling, tasting, etc. Unverifiable
which
external
is
experiences.
goes back to the idea it's all locality, right? It's all relative. Even between two individuals seeing the same thing at the relatively same space and time, and it still
Yeah,
have the difference because of how the whole process of us becoming sentient, we're born at a certain place, born at a certain time, and how we grow up and that whole process of growing up from an infant to an adult, even every step of that way, a step of the way is informed very differently, even though we're supposedly seeing the same world. But the process, the minute differences, and even some defects, supposedly, right? We all have, I don't know. Some people are. That's the thing. How do you even define normal? A person who's born normal, like really, you can't really define that. We all have some issues. We all have some certain defects and what have you, right? That's not normal, quote unquote. So this is why the world is so varied. There's too much variations, right, to kind of quantify completely what things are. So that's the quandary that we come into. Just as you can't predict the market, you can't predict certain things within even the weather. I mean, we already got pretty good at predicting the weather more or less, but you can't 100% predict whether it's going to rain or not. I mean, you can have a
right.
large percentage that is going to happen, but you can't know exactly when or how, So
That's right. The sensory limitations, the fact that we perceive not, 100% of reality, even the fact that we only see a certain spectrum of light and sound, it means that we're very limited by our senses in investigating and perceiving reality. Then with the fact that we already discussed this before as well, the fact that brain kind of constructs reality, right? We're not exactly seeing things. The scene is being reconstructed in the brain. And I've even read about some explanations of the way the mind works, is that the fact that since the senses, they kind of are their own consciousnesses. So you have the hearing consciousness, you have the sight consciousness, etc., and they're combined into this one amalgamation that you are experiencing as reality. But essentially, it's the brain doing it, right? It's some kind of faculty of the brain that puts it all together into one cohesive
right.
experience.
Yeah. That's why some of the error can happen. Like optical illusions.
Yeah.
These things is just kind of the quirks of the system that is being put together. And it's fascinating because it's almost like the picture is being put together for you in real time as you're perceiving it, right? So it's like, or at least what was that thing? It was like you already have perceived it before you know it, because there's the
Hmm.
delay of how the brain is constructing that as opposed to the input. So sometimes your subconscious already know it, already have perceived it, but you consciously only knew it a bit later. It's very fraction of a and the time is very quick, right? But it's still there's a delay, meaning that this is why they say, sometimes you can be intuitive about things where you kind of already perceived it before you consciously know it, right? So, but yeah, there's that processing going on, which is the property of the brain, and that can be depending how you want it to see it. Sometimes it could be good, sometimes it could be bad. That could be a thing that cause you to it might make a mistake because of that, or of the difference how you perceive it. And I know this because sometimes, like, when you try to do something quickly, you're rushing to get things done, you just start missing stuff. You
Right.
realize, oh, why did I miss that? Like, that should not be happening, but it does. You completely missed it, right? Because your mind was somewhere else. You were focusing on something else, and completely that's been blocked off. So yeah,
That's right. And then there's a collective and simulation hypothesis, which is pretty fun. So the whole reality could be a socially sustained illusion. It's a collective hallucination, which I've definitely heard of before. And in certain ways, it definitely works like that. I felt it on myself, be entering a specific group of people, every little group of friends have their own norms and expectations, etc. It's kind of like that. Same in society. It's just with people who you don't know, there's still common social conventions, but especially in multicultural places, it's very palpable that everybody has their own little expectations and what they consider norm. But in a more or less homogenous society, there's definitely, like we discussed Japan, there's definitely a certain set of rules and expectations that everybody behaves by. But that, in a sense, just kind of created by the fact that everybody abides by these rules. It doesn't
Right.
exist on its own.
Yeah.
It's literally people are sustaining it through their own behavior. It's like a living culture that way. But it's just hallucination in the sense that it doesn't have to exist that way. Yeah, you kind of manifest it by adhering to certain rules.
Which is the cultural differences, right? Like, each culture has their own strengths and weaknesses and what have you. It's very observable once you go to travel to different parts of the world. You start observing, oh wow, that's how they do things. Wow, that's interesting. Because in your world, you never do it that way, but they do it that way, and there's a rationale, right, of why they do it in a certain way that can be explained, and that can go into their language, their greetings, and different kind of it's very fascinating, right? How because you can be anything. You can behave in any way, and the
Yeah, you can
society
completely
decides.
forgo the society's rules.
Well, yes, you can, but you're also informed about these behaviors as well from the society, that you're living in. So the is very much varied how much you can do and how much you willing to do and what end up happening of that choice, right? So maybe you can do certain thing from a different place in the world, and that's totally fine. But if you do it in another part of the world, that's the no-no, right? So that is a huge spectrum of what's accepted, what's not accepted, and kind of what can you get away with and what can you not get away with, or because it's like, yeah, each individual when they come to, to interact, there has to be a basis that you build between that interaction. Okay, we have a certain level of trust, so to speak, right? This is the whole social contract. Like you want to build a system in which everybody abides this, so everybody can predict what the other person can do. Because if you are just aggressive for no reason, then people are like, oh well, I don't want to deal with you because I don't know what you're gonna do. The uncertainty aspect is the biggest problem that people have, right? They want to have
Right.
a
With the social systems, we kind of want to minimize that danger, right? The danger and
yes.
unpredictability. So there's general safety for everybody involved. Yeah.
So there's certain rules that make sense because is in put in place because of is informed by what happened before. Maybe there's some horrible thing that happened because there was no rule about that. This is the whole safety rule. Is why safety rule exists is because it's been paid in blood, right? So things like that are institutionalized and put in place because, well, you're interacting with this many people. Like you don't know what their behavior is going to be. So you're going to have to behave in a certain way when you're out there with other people, right? When their life are at stake sometimes, right? Like that's why you obey traffic laws because if you don't, then somebody might die, right? So it's things like that where we're dealing with where it's, yes, it's fine to in your own head it might work a certain way, but this is the part about communication, right? Because sometimes it can be misinterpreted by another person and that could cause all kinds of issues in the real world, right? So this is where that's why my initial reaction to this idea that you can live your own life however the way you want it, and and that's just the way it is. That's why my initial reaction is negative because like, well, yeah, it's true, but there's gonna be some problem that's gonna come forth when you think that way. When you think that your way is the right way and absolutely the right way, well, not really, right? Because that's just your perspective, and
No,
that
but
can be
it's going to be the
subjective.
right world for you. Like, again, you're trying to, I don't know, like define some kind of objective rule to live, but it's not, it doesn't exist. It can't be. So I don't understand why you keep bringing up that point. It's like you're trying to satisfy some kind of social norms, but like, what do you care about the social norms? Yes, we know that everything is arbitrary and it can't be objective, but you keep repeating that point again and again. Of course, the person can only live a life from one standpoint, but it doesn't mean that they will be in conflict with everybody else at all times. It just points out to the fact that you want to consciously define and decide what it is without allowing the society and external circumstances to guide your whole life, because that's not living. You're just drifting according to the external circumstances and environment, but you don't exist then, because there's no consciousness in you.
It's not completely just accepting, but it's, well, I don't know.
I think it's like some kind of literally like a belief that surfaces that you constantly reiterate, as if you're afraid of being yourself in a society.
Because I don't know who I am, right? That's the thing. I don't know what I'm even about. And that's the question I guess I always have. It's like, okay, what is it then? So
but you get to define it. There's no other way.
Which I don't know how to define it. So that's the problem I come into. Is like, okay, how do I define myself?
Any way you want.
Which is
any way you want. I have no clue. There's no one else to get to tell you. You have to do it yourself.
Which I have no clue what that is. So maybe there's some defect in my brain or whatever it is. I can't define what this for me. Like, I don't know how I want to live. It's not like, oh, I want to do it this way. This is the way that I want it. This is the exact way I want to do it, and everybody can just, I don't care. I'm just doing this, right? I don't know what that is. So I get it. For a person who's very much know what they want, that's a great thing to have, because you have an idea of what you want to be and how you want to be. Like, it's great. But when you don't know that, sure, I understand the argument. Yes, you can be whoever you want to be. You can do whatever comes to your mind or however you want to be. Yeah, of course, I accept that. That's true for everybody. But what is that? How do you define what that thing is? I guess you can't really define it other than just know it yourself. So
no, so you define it like the way you define it. So
how do you define your life in this sense? Like, this is the way I want to live my life, and this is the thing that you can put a word to or put a concept on, or at least you can communicate. Like, this is what I want in my life.
Yeah, well, I know it for myself because it's all about spirituality, but it's ultimately exploring what reality is, what the rules are, what is of value, what is worth pursuing, what is worth of interest. So my life it's all about a quest. It's a quest of knowledge, wisdom, pursuit, and understanding of what's good and what's not. So my life is all about curiosity that way. I would say curiosity and creativity, because that's what I like. That's what I found to be valuable, insightful, pleasurable, creative, constructive. So to me, it's about that. It's about spiritual exploration and creative exploration.
That's great.
But that's
you can actually define it. I can't define anything about my life. Maybe I'm not giving enough effort in thinking about it, but I don't have anything like that. I can't say, oh, this is what I want to do. I mean, I can always point to like some aspirations, I guess, but then it's like, well, do I really want that? I don't know. I don't have no clue. It's not like, oh, I must be that. I want to get to that. I have nothing like that. That could be just, like I said, a mental defect or something about myself or how I grew up or whatever that is, that I can't put a hand on it. I'm like, oh, this is it. This is it. This is like number one thing I want to be. I never knew what I wanted to be. Even as a kid, you asked me, oh, what do you want to be? I don't know. So
I remember what I wanted to be as a kid. I wanted to be either a firefighter or a cook, if you can imagine that. Because for whatever reasons, right? Like whatever reason, as a small boy, they picked it up from somewhere, right? Literally encountered someone in reality. For some reason thought, oh, that's cool. I guess it will be that. But yeah, from the standpoint of this kind of zoomed out analysis, yeah, any kind of choice in that regard would be arbitrary, and who's to say what's worth and whatnot. But it ultimately all goes to what you want. So for some people, they really want to become someone, and then they study for 15 years and they become a doctor, and I guess they want it that bad, and they're actually able to do it. I still have no idea how it's actually possible for people to become doctors. Not only you have to want to do it, you have to be able to
Yeah.
learn all that stuff, really comprehend it and utilize it. It's a huge it's a huge amount of effort, financial strain, time. It's unimaginable to me. But that is only possible because surely those people want it enough that they are willing to do whatever it takes. It's
Yeah.
like they already have this end in mind and they're just walking towards it. But why they want it and why they want it so bad, that's the part that,
It's
yeah, it
eternally
also,
driven.
but how does it originate, right? Why does it work like that for some? And then why do some other folks just don't care about anything like that at all? And again, yeah, neither one of them is more valid than another because what would make it more valid than another, right? But it's still interesting that the whole breadth of the variety of human experiences is so wide. There's so much stuff that people encounter in their lives that, yeah, definitely nothing makes it more correct, I guess. But it's still, I guess, it has to somehow link to what you'd want out of life because if you don't even concern yourself with it, then you're fine with whatever, I guess, right?
I mean, yeah, you're gonna have to define it for yourself, whether it's or even not define it, still defining it, right? You're being defined by what you haven't defined. I think part of it, the reason why I am reacting to the question in that way is also informed by my cultural background. This is how I'm not doing a generalization here, but this is kind of how Asian thinks. We think socially. We don't
Hmm.
think as individuals. This is why you see the in Japan or in China, this is how
Okay,
people
right,
think.
right,
It's
right.
all about everybody else. It's not just you. You are just part of it. You cannot think of it, oh, I am special. I am, I want it this way. No. You got to consider the impact that your action have on other people and other things. So this is why that thing keeps coming up.
Right.
Right? It's
Okay.
something unconscious. It's just kind of like how I'm being culturally informed.
Right. Yeah, yeah. I keep forgetting about that. And it's true. Yeah,
So
it's
that's the
gotta be a
interesting
big
part.
cultural
It's the
difference. Yeah.
West and East dichotomy, right? Because I get it. Like in the kind of Western canon, it's just the idea is about individualism. That's just how people think. It's like it's all about what you want, right? How you want to define your life, and that's also all valid. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying this is how part of it is how it's informed.
I mean, either way, you get to make decisions about how
Right.
you lead
Of
your life,
course.
right?
Yeah.
But I guess the question leads us further into what does it mean to make decisions consciously or unconsciously? Like, if decisions are made unconsciously, are they actually made? Is it you who are making them? And if it's not you, is that a problem? Because the only thing you can gauge everything by is how comfortable or uncomfortable you are with your actual reality, right? With your day to day situation, with how you feel, what you experience. Because if you experience suffering and negative emotions, then yeah, something is definitely wrong, right? But if you experience, I guess there's like, I guess could say three levels, right? So suffering, neutral, and happy, ecstatic, which is, two extremes and one middle. And if you are, say, in the middle, is that the ideal? Is that what it's supposed to be? Because
See,
surely neither extremes are sustainable.
but see, the problem here is again, since it is about how you as an individual define it for yourself, there's almost no
But
correct answer.
there's still like gonna be a level for you personally. Again, you're bringing this up. I don't know why you're saying this. This is a given. It's a given. We're only talking about it's you and me. There are no other people here, right? It's only your mind and my mind. We can't talk about other people. So don't bring up this point. I don't care about what possibly it could be. I'm asking you, I'm talking to you. In your personal direct reality, if the house like caved in on your head right now, you'd become uncomfortable, you'd experience suffering, and you'd be caused to act and to make decisions and to do something about it. That's what I'm talking about, just your direct reality. So, similarly, if you don't have those, I guess, external circumstances that drive you or cause you to do stuff and you're just comfortable, is that the ultimate goal then? Is just to be comfortable and neither suffering nor ecstatic? Would you agree with that?
Isn't it the whole idea is about escape suffering, right? The idea is that.
Like nobody wants to suffer
Well,
for
yeah.
sure.
So that's the general um
But that
That's
escape, like escape to where? Escape to where there's just an absence of suffering, or is there something else, something better?
see. So that's the part where it's very hard to answer because with suffering can come growth as well. So let's just
Right.
say what you're saying, like, okay, well, if it is all about getting to be comfortable, well, being comfortable can be bad as well because you won't grow. This is why they say you need to get out of your comfort zone because the comfort zone is great for you to feel, but you kind of stop there, right? You're not gonna go further than that, right? You will, at least you will be hard pressed to kind of get out of the comfort zone because you're already comfortable. You don't need anything. So that can mean stagnation as well. But then it's all about, well, how do you define the whole structure then? If the structure is being defined by achievement, then yes, being comfortable will be bad, right? But what if I am comfortable? I don't need anything. Then is that really a bad thing?
That's what I'm trying to explore.
So it's all relative then, right? What's your policy basically? Like, is your policy
And
being
where it originates, right? Because some people, like, I guess they would have even a whole culture. Some families have a culture of high achievement.
right?
So, which means like the parents would get you from the
Yeah,
youngest age. Actually, I
yeah,
heard a story about this recently from this Russian woman who immigrated to U.S. And it's a pretty interesting how she raised her daughter. I think she ended up marrying some American dude, but she had a daughter, right? And that woman, she was very interested and motivated in essentially giving her daughter the most tools to deal with reality up front as much as possible. So she taught her the alphabet at the age of 2, and then soon afterwards reading, etc. So extremely accelerated learning, right? So like as soon as she was able to, like, I guess you would start like with an animal, it's like, okay, as soon as you start getting this, we're going to the next step. So she started giving her this knowledge from the age of 2. And as she started growing up, the daughter, she became like a more conscious adult where she was able to understand what money is, right? What is the fact that things cost. And the mother, she was so wise. She was so smart with it because she didn't like hand her things over. She
right.
taught her that you can get whatever you want, but it is you who needs to figure out
you must earn it.
everything. She taught that to her as early as she could grasp it, but that was her agenda. Because as soon as she's done that, her daughter, so young, she just started figuring out ways to make money,
Mhm.
get herself things she wants,
Right.
understanding how things are valued, how her labor translates to things that she can get. And she became an extremely successful woman. She grew up, had education, had businesses. And to me, it was such an inspirational story because, I mean, wouldn't everybody then want to be raised like that? Because it seems like you have so much agency. If only you were given and developed these tools early on,
Yeah.
you know?
So, well, yeah, this is exactly the case of why a lot of parents want their kids to be as well adapt to like teach them a lot of skills and things. Of course, is what every parents want, but sometimes the reality being the actuality is very different, right? Between I mean, there are some studies about economically wealthier people. Of course, they have the means to do that a lot better than, say, more, poor families. And there is that difference of, poor families because they don't have the means. It's not exactly the number one rule, but because of that, their way of teaching their kids is more liberal. You can do whatever you like. But that's the problem, right? When the kids are given too much freedom, they don't know what they want. They're too much freedom. They're not being put
Yeah,
into a
it's about the guidance, right? Like that this why there's also parents exist, yeah, who are like saying like, oh yeah, kids can pick their gender and stuff. It's very very interesting dichotomy of philosophy essentially because you could do that, but then I think the the person becomes detached from reality that way, because then they're choosing some abstract things that who knows what they're going to do to them when they grow up, you know?
It not a tangent, but like just to speak about what we were saying before as well. Well, that can be that's how I perceive it. That's one of the dangers of this idea to say that, well, you can do whatever you like. Well, not really. You kind of have to have a almost like experimental scientific approach to it. Like, okay, what do I have? What's my what's my strength? What's my weaknesses? What can I do? Not because I can be anything. Well, yeah, but that's the thing. You want to reduce the potential, right, to a thing in which you can actually do, that you can excel at, that you can actually make it into something, not just you could.
Yeah, but you don't know that. They literally have to mess around and find out, right? So,
Right. Which is
but you
why,
do have to start with the belief that you can do anything. It's supposed to grant you that ability to experiment and derive at something. It's part of the process. But without the belief that you can do anything, you're just going to be too scared to try anything.
right. I mean, but in exactly, it is true. But I think in what actually happens to a lot of people is that, well, they were never needed to be taught the fear, because the fear happens by itself, right? You stop yourself. Most people, all of us, have experienced this, where you put a stop to what you were not supposed to, but like what you want to do. Sometimes you put a stop to that because you were fearful of what if it doesn't work out, what could happen, right? So so it's not like nobody else can stop you other than yourself. And a lot of times we stop ourselves from achieving our dreams or things that we want to achieve because we keep telling ourselves, oh, I'm not good enough, or this and that. So really, yes, the education is a really big part of it. The kid has to be kind of taught early on to not only to chase after the dream and what you want to achieve, but also kind of have like a more based understanding of the world, right? Like you were saying that example, the mother taught the daughter, like, yeah, you must achieve everything by yourself. This is how the world works. There's no sugarcoating. There's like, yep, if you want these things, and she's giving her these tools to achieve that. And that's great parenting. A lot of times we don't have that, right? I mean, not to say blaming the parents or whatever, but it's just sometimes, things don't happen that way, and therefore you kind of have to find it yourself. And of course, you can't always rely on the parents. As a kid yourself, there's why critical thinking is very important, right? You got to learn how to learn, and from there you can find out more about. Because this is the thing, I learned that too late. Like I did not run my own kind of business until I'm like before I was almost 30, right? I was just working all jobs from before that. But what stopped me was just myself. I did not have belief in myself, and therefore that was the biggest problem. I stay put because apparently you just think that you're not good enough to do these things. But by overcoming that sort of inferiority complex, that's when you can start saying, oh, you know what? You basically flip the script. The idea that,
That's what I'm saying. You could do anything. You
well,
have to
yes,
start with that.
right. So, oh, there's that. But all I'm saying is that in terms of my personal life, I still have to figure that out, right? In terms of externally, certain
Uh,
things that
so
happen,
this is, I
but
think that's I think that's a fun experiment to, yeah, just to meditate on, to figure it out. Because essentially, if you set a goal, you can at least move towards it. If you don't set a goal, it's like, what's that saying? Yeah, I don't remember how exactly it goes, but it's akin to that, that if you set a goal, then, a certain amount of paths will lead you to that goal. But if you set no goal, any path will lead you there, which is wherever, essentially. So I guess it still comes back to the fact that either you choose something and you decide something that's what I want, and you move towards that as a mode of living, regardless of whether you get there or not, but you have some kind of meaning structure that you say, I want this because of that, and not because there's some kind of ultimate truth or meaning or
yeah,
value in it. No, this is what I'm saying, that you decided for yourself because for whatever reason you decide, you make that reason, you create it. And what I believe happens is that reality essentially aligns itself to that, because you create the reason for it to exist that way. And it doesn't concern anybody else, but it is the fact. It's a fact that if you put up a goal and you start putting effort toward it, you'll be moving towards meeting that goal. And one day you may come close, you know? But if you don't set it, it definitely, not definitely, but it will likely not happen. Like if you have a goal to, I don't know, like very specific, like I'm going to buy a house, you can definitely move towards that direction. And there will be motivational factors will be created based on that. But if not, yeah, you just not have it. I guess it goes back still. It's an interesting topic of motivation and what motivates it and what not. It all boils down to this pain and pleasure principle. But if those motivators are not there, or if you have this, your own sensitivity is just essentially you're not moved to even make these goals. Is that a problem? That's what I'm trying to
Yeah, that's the thing.
figure out.
Like you were saying, you need to set the goal, meaning that you will have to define, just as what we were talking about in the beginning. We were talking about these theories of knowledge, or how you construct these sets of systems, and we were talking about the scientific method. And that is basically it, right? The idea that for humanity, we found out that we need these scientific method to ascertain what the rules. We have suppositions, right? Like you're saying, you need to define that goal, right? So in science, we define that goal as that two axiom is already says that, okay, we got to go according to this. This is the basis by which we can even expand this system at all.
But that's not a goal. What does it have to do with a goal?
I'm just saying it's the same. You set a premise, right? A goal is like, okay, I want to achieve this. So that's the premise by which you anchor everything toward that. So the same idea that the axiom is basically there to pivot. I mean, to anchor the entire.
No, those are completely different thing. A goal is a reality you want to experience. An axiom is a given reality that you can't ignore, that you have to base everything upon.
Okay.
A goal is
Okay.
something you can say. You could say, my goal is to make a teleporter. That doesn't exist. That's not an axiom.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
It's a configuration of reality that you want to achieve. So those are two different things. And I'm asking, I'm interested specifically in about the goal at this point. I actually had this argument recently with somebody, and these all perspectives are malleable. So I am also, I do like to play devil's advocate sometimes. I even switch my own perspectives here and there. But there, I was looking at the goals from the spiritual perspective of kind of how do you know which goal is the worthy one. So that perspective tried to transcend the whole concept of setting goals as just enjoying what is already, because ultimately that's just what you want. You kind of want to just be and be happy.
Right.
But you can forego the whole goal setting process by just being and being happy. You see how like these frameworks, they completely just can go from one to another. But it's fun to essentially evaluate them one by one and compare to them and see what the outcomes are. So this is really what these discussions are. We're not figuring out any type of objective truths or anything, but in talking about them and in sharing our own opinions and kind of opinions about it, we are inevitably coming to a conclusion about what's better according to us, right? There's no one else that can, like, we can't, we'll have to ask other people to think, to know what they think. Because I literally got in a fight with that guy online because he got triggered, dude. He was telling me like, you are wrong. The reality and God can only operate through us setting the goals and moving towards them. And I was saying that doesn't matter. You can just enjoy being as a non-teleological goal. It's like as a goal without an end, because you already arrived. You achieve that goal if you set your goal to be in harmony. Like, I'm going to be meditating all day and I'm going to be receiving peace and pleasure from that. Then you're done. You're not getting anything else. So the fact that you're sitting down to meditate every day is an act. Yeah, it's a thing that you still have to do, but that's essentially the only goal you have because it's that much achievable. It's that accessible. You sit down and you're there. And that guy essentially disagreed with me completely, and he wanted to engage with me further, but I was really didn't like his tone, so I was like not really interested in what he had to say at the end. So we parted with these completely different views, but this is where it brings us still here. So this is why I'm asking you. I'm just exploring what your opinions and ideas are about it, because you do seem to be in that state of just enjoying what is without setting some kind of external lofty goals that you have to get to and work towards.
I think it's part of that whole the general kind of apathy, I guess. It's
But
just
is
kind
it apathy, or is it literally like, what did you already arrive, where
I think it was
anybody would
look,
want to arrive?
I think everybody get informed by kind of their life stories, right? Because if my life unfolded differently, let's just say if I was one of those quote unquote high achievers, right? Your experience will be different. And so your idea of what's important or what you want your life to be will be so different than in this case, where I am, maybe because of the long time of me just basically not conforming or accepting what society kind of dictates as the goal or as the achievement and all that. In some way, I just surrendered myself. Like, okay, whatever. I'm not playing that.
That's what I'm interested about. So maybe that essentially you can transcend any framework like that by simply being comfortable in
Yeah.
your own skin,
Right, exactly. Don't
to
accept
be the
what any
guy that you are.
yeah, you don't accept what anybody else's standard or metric, right? By not
I
caring.
think that's essentially the spiritual hack. Because if you have that, then what else? What else is there? You're just comfortable being the kind of character that you
You
seem to
are.
be being,
So,
right?
yeah. So you don't have
Huh.
not too much quandaries about, oh, what I'm not. It's like you don't worry about the opportunity cost or whatever. You know how some people regret certain things
Yeah,
or
right. It's
start
like, oh, I
thinking,
could
oh,
be doing
yeah, I could
this
be
and I could
doing
be doing
this. What
that.
if this, that, like, whatever. It's like,
Yes. Okay, interesting.
so,
I've encountered this conversation before as well, and it 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 clashed at the point of self-improvement. Is
right.
self-improvement
Yeah.
valid?
Yeah.
When the other point of view was, no, you are what you are, so just make peace with it and enjoy. And I've always struggled to reconcile the two because, I mean, self-improvement exists as a
Yeah.
concept, so surely you are able to do something in that whole area. But the other part is also true. So you see how anything is true. You can just pick a stance
Yeah.
and embody it, and it will be true for you. This
Yeah.
is what I'm talking about. Like
So,
that, it's all subjective, but you get to choose these frameworks. And if you say, no, self improvement is my whole life, you're going to be playing the self improvement game then.
yeah.
And it will be a game because definitely there's stuff to do.
Yeah.
I mean, all different degrees of efficacy, but you could do a bunch of things. There's no end to the self-help books, right, that you can try, and all the visualizations and whatever you want, all the meditations. They're going to do something. Or you could say, nah, I'm good. And you're going to be good,
Yeah, there's no problem,
right?
right? I think it's just when these things do clash, when we kind of put it in that frame of this is perfect because see, we're talking about epistemology, right? The theories of knowledge, how we constructing all this, and now we basically come full circle in the idea
Yeah.
that we start finding that, well, the definition of this thing can be it is a totally different conclusion depending on where you start where you
Yeah.
start this, right? Because you could,
You can evaluate anything from any standpoint, and it will be valid. You can evaluate not having goals from the standpoint of overachiever, and you're going to be wrong according to them. You can evaluate the overachiever from the standpoint of a Taoist who already gotten the Tao and who is just
Right.
fine with the
Yeah.
way they are, because why not? And then they would be right. Because it kind of goes back to this point that we explored on the map, was talking about the system cannot be really evaluated from inside of it.
Yeah.
And nothing, so nothing makes it more valid than any other system. But then this is what I'm saying. It's like it naturally you arrive at the point that any framework is valid. You get to accept it. Like, and if you accept it, it's true for you. But it's only true for you because you accepted it.
Yeah. So I guess the question when we talk about this, we're inherently gonna find the problem that yes, the premise is true, but to evaluate it, you must put it in a frame of reference where you have to kind of judge it comparatively to other modalities, right? To other systems.
But
But
you're gonna
that
be judging
bias,
it from one specific standpoint still.
yeah,
So
which is me,
it
which is the
goes back to
paradox.
what you want.
Right, exactly. It's the paradox of just okay, well, if you want to talk about it, then you are inevitably going to start comparing it. But
Exactly.
that's beside the point, right? So we almost can't talk
No,
about it because it's just like,
it's the only way you can evaluate or talk about anything is by comparing it with the other stuff.
yes, that's the only way. But is the premise is that anything that you think it will be true, it will become true if you just if this is the entire system is your way of your
Yeah.
basically accept the premise, right?
Yeah.
So it's that's very interesting.
Yeah, like we just compared, right? Like you, because I've dabbled in self-improvement, so I know what's involved there. I know what kind of things that they are. Like at certain points in my life, I've engaged in like a lot of my day would be dedicated to various practices.
Oh yeah, like
You know, whether it's a
counting the time, the counting the each task, each block on the
right,
calendar and
even that,
execute.
like yeah, like I gotta do this, gotta do that. You know, that's something I've struggled with because like it was difficult to find the balance for it because from one standpoint, well, surely these things are good and I want to do them. Correct? Correct. But then once it comes to actually doing them, like, well, crap, if anything is worth doing every day, you know, kind of like going to the gym, a physical activity, you want to have it on a regular basis, you know. For me, like I got to do it every day because that's the frequency that I arrived at just empirically. Like I tried it out and I realized I got to move every day. But there is such a thing as overdoing it because, like, I mean, I could be going to the gym twice a day. Bodybuilders do that. For me, I'm like, I could do that, but then it literally eliminates a lot of other stuff
Right.
that you won't be able to do it.
So yeah, it's about finding your speed, right? What's your
Finding your speed, finding your balance, and finding your combination of things. That's where it, like, see, it all gets still aligned for you and under you. But how does that alignment happen is what I'm trying to figure out because
well, and
these
naturally it will
days,
do, right? Because you know you're comfortable with how your what your heuristic is, what your kind of feeling of this I like, this I don't like, I like this better, I like that better, and this is how I work, and you have a sense of it.
it is kind of a
So
feeling, but also like this is why I experimented with all of these practices, and I'm actually I'm back. I think at this point I'm back on the meditation bandwagon
yeah,
consistently because I tried it and comparatively everything goes better if I meditate every day.
yeah,
That's just the truth. I am more creative, I'm more stable mood-wise, I'm more energetic,
yeah,
I'm more productive. And because as soon as I abandon it, I just start doing some nonsense stuff. I start
right,
like ruminating, wasting my time, just
yeah.
doubting, you know. So everything just destabilizes.
Hmm.
So for me, I figured that out. But yeah, it does require you to put, like, you have to it's discipline essentially, right? You have to go back to discipline.
Yeah.
But because you realize, okay, this is so fundamental, cornerstone, that it has to be done. Everything else comes after to that idea. But that, yeah, it is only through messing around, right? Testing, experimenting, and making conclusions. And hopefully not forgetting because that part, you know, somehow it's still uh, it's still possible to forget all this stuff. Everything that you've ever learned kind of easily can forget it if you don't put it to work. That's why I am kind of obsessed with making a perfect day schedule, because ideally,
Yeah.
all the good things that you want to have, you'd have every day. It doesn't, of course, necessarily work that way because, yeah, but this is why I don't know why. It's some kind of a flow, which flows this way or that way, and you're not exactly in control.
Well, I
Not
think
really.
by doing that, I think for you, you will be much more focused because of the nature of meditation, right? Like you're just,
I feel that way, yeah.
because otherwise thoughts are just going to invade your head. Be like, this comes, that
I think
comes,
so. You
right?
know what? Yeah, it does that, and you start believing those thoughts, and you're not as mindful, so you're getting led astray essentially by all these random thoughts. And meditation allows you to preclude that whole scenario from happening.
Yeah. So, as we could establish, it's really everything. There's no easy answer. The answer is up to you, right? But however that comes about, what's the combination, that it depends on the person, right? So for you, you found that the meditation is the pillar by which you can achieve a lot of the happiness and the contentment that you have in life. And that's great, perfectly viable. But for some other people, it might be different. So not to say that that's the only way to do it. So it's really, yeah. I mean, I guess for me,
I
it's
guess
more
it
about.
still goes back to the fact that, so I'm just trying to compare, like, so other people who would not benefit from meditation. I'm just trying to imagine what that would be like and why that would be the case.
I think everybody could benefit from it, but
Like,
is that the,
I am, but it can only be established. You see, I have the experience. I have something to compare it to. I have experience with meditation. I have experience without meditation. Side by side, I choose the better version, right? But this is the trouble for the people who don't know what it's about.
I don't think,
See, I don't know how I arrived at meditation. Like, I only arrived at it because it was being served to me as the answer everywhere I tried to look, right? It was
right.
written on the fence, as we've both seen. And I took it personally. I
Yeah.
took it seriously. I was like, all right, meditate, bet. And then I just did that. But what caused me to take it seriously? What caused me to believe that there is anything? I have no idea. That still is a mystery,
I
This is
think,
where you start being religious, essentially, because, like,
yeah.
why did that happen?
Because see, that's the fundamental. See, that's the aspect of it, right? Like well, this podcast would not even be possible if you weren't curious about it, because it kind of led to that, right? Because by talking to you, I learned a lot about, not just on the spiritual front, but also other. Because as we're doing this, you see, we often come into conflict because of our different belief
Yeah,
systems or different. That's very interesting because I like that, because
that's
that
good.
kind of teach you, okay, this is two different mind talking to each other and try to figure out,
Yeah,
oh, why is it this way or that way for you and for the other. So yeah, this is great. But obviously, yes, we definitely are having that kind of, oh, I see, you're coming from that point of view and I'm from here. We're trying to figure it out, right? What you were
and
saying,
you see, in this process, I'm not insisting on any specific point of view. What I am trying to get you to do is really, how do I say it? Kind of pick a thing and back it up.
right?
Not through some ultimate lens of ultimateness. There's no such thing, because you're starting to talk about things from that angle, and
Okay.
that you can't do that. So you need to cut it out entirely, because all I'm asking you is what your personal opinion is based on your beliefs, your experience, and your idea. Yeah,
Right.
we won't be able to establish anything else. But you
That's
often
interesting.
start talking about it from this, like,
That's
well, it
interesting.
could be anything. Yeah, I
That's
know it could be anything, but I'm asking you.
right. That means I have the issue of having my everything defined by what's around me, meaning I don't
Yeah.
have a central pillar. It means that I'm not ego. Well, I wouldn't say I'm egoless, but like it's kind of like you don't have much of an ego to begin with, in the sense that you're not putting
Yeah,
your own.
and you make it sound like essentially it doesn't matter, and I agree that's the case, but then we can't have this podcast.
Right. There's no
You know what I
reason for
mean?
having to do anything. Right.
Because every conversation here is an inquiry, is just an inquiry and exploration for what it could be, and it's a given that it could be anything, that anything could be a truth. We can't verify anything to such a complete degree that it denotes objective reality, which is kind of the whole topic of today, was what we started with. But essentially, yeah, if you really believe in that to such a degree, then yeah, there's no point in doing this podcast. Essentially, I'm asking for intellectual honesty. Because if you really don't care about anything to such a degree, then you're done. There's nothing to talk about, right? Because what's the point? What are we going to find out? If every conversation arrives at the same conclusion that nothing matters, there is no objective truth, and anything can be, then that's the end of every conversation.
Right.
So we can only investigate these things by taking a bit, imagining it, okay, seeing how our own experience compares to that, making a value judgment based on that experience, based on your values, your current values, right? Not some ultimate top values that are objective for everybody. You can't do that. You can only inspect your own beliefs and understanding in this unit of time, in this right now, because tomorrow is going to be different because of this conversation. But it can only be done through this inspection, and not really by speculation. It is just an inspection of your beliefs, of your understanding, and an opportunity to improve it, to complete it, to make it more accurate. But that's all it is. To me, it's done through this just earnest exploration process. You don't start with the end in mind. You're just seeing where it goes, and then kind of making little decisions and learnings and conclusions along the way.
I mean, this is great because it turned into a therapy session for me. Because it really made me start thinking, okay, what is your value? What is your, because then we start seeing because I don't think I have ever done an examination of myself in that sense, because I couldn't. I don't know myself, right? Because with the reflection of a conversation, that's when you start pointing out, oh, I see, that's how I'm coming across. And you start seeing, oh, okay, I see this what it is. So I guess my problem is I have a general apathy that is becoming a problem, right? Where one could say that, oh yeah, you're comfortable with your world, but not. I don't think that's correct. It's one thing to say you're comfortable with how things are. Another is because I think anything could be improved, right? To say that nothing can be improved, you're okay with whatever. No, I mean, yes, human beings are very adaptive. That doesn't mean, but that could also mean is maladaptive.
It always goes back to you. It's not that I am saying that there's a problem or anything. I'm just exploring what it is. Because as we established, you could just consider it's fine and you're done. And there's nothing external can dictate to you that there's a problem or not. I am simply curious enough about, is that what it means? Is that the case? Because from my external view, I don't know, right? I'm just asking questions. So you're not, this is not a reason for you to oh, I need to set goals or anything. It's just literally an invitation to inspect things. Because I'm just trying with everything, with this conversation, with the spirituality that I'm exploring, I'm interested in what is going on consciously and subconsciously. Because I think I'm bothered by this idea that if stuff going on unconsciously or subconsciously, who's doing that? Are you doing that? But if you are doing that, in what way is it you if you are not aware of it, But that's literally a fact. One of the upcoming episodes we're going to do on Jung.
Oh, yeah.
Is going to be pretty deep as well. See, we can't even go through this little mind map. For Jan, it's going to be a huge one.
God.
For Jan, it's going to be insane.
Oh, yeah.
But that's what because it's definitely something, right? It exists. Psychologists and scientists studied this thing for decades, and they're saying there are all these mechanisms and there's always going on. I'm curious about that because I'm curious to understand what's going on. Are you just a guy who is being played by another guy? Are you some kind of complex psyche and consciousness that has multiple parts? If that's the case, what are the rules for engaging with those parts? It's just this curiosity.
That's how it feels like, yeah.
Yeah. But in terms of what's driving me and why I want to know, I think it is perhaps driven by a desire of how can reality be better. I do think I do have that drive, because if I didn't have that drive, I just then I don't also I don't know what I would do. I would just sit at home and not do anything. Like everything that I'm interested in right now, even the creative pursuit, is kind of out of fascination for how does this consciousness even work? How does reality work? And what does it even mean to create? How does the creation process works? All of this stuff is kind of like divine,
Right.
How do you create stuff? What does that mean to like create a painting or a story? How does it even work? Like you see, it's all connected. Like we can't, our whole podcast, the whole idea is this one big tangent, okay? Everything is just constructed of these tangents. I'm completely at peace with it right now. I don't care. Doesn't matter.
There's
We
too many
start with
tangents, bro.
the topic, and wherever we go, it's not gonna be the
Yeah.
thing that we started with. I know that for a fact, and this is the model, okay?
Like,
This
welcome
is
to
the
the
recipe. Yeah.
big ass tangent.
Yeah, because any string you start pulling, it's an endless string that goes who the hell knows where.
So okay, so one thing I feel like in my perspective here with today's episode, one of the thing that just came to my mind, one of the aspect is that okay, well, doesn't matter if you know or don't know about where you want to be, but I think one of the thing that's true is that you should always become better than before. Not in the sense of self-improvement, do all these things just to get, but I think that in general, it doesn't matter what you're doing, whether that's meditation or whatever, I think the state of the human condition is really part of it is that you need to constantly to be on, you cannot stagnate. You should not take
Yeah,
stagnation as a
yeah.
thing as fine.
I've
It's not
heard this
fine.
before as
It's
well,
not.
because essentially you're either progressing or regressing.
Yes.
I've heard that in actually, yeah, like my meditation teacher actually told me that. He literally said that in spiritual practice, that's the reality. You're either progressing or you're regressing, and it is a sobering thought because it's I agree, it's true
Yeah.
because you're either doing the thing or you're not doing the thing,
Right.
and when you're not doing the thing, it's kind of like with fitness. It's a perfect analogy. If you're not working on your fitness, your body is going to shit.
Yeah.
That's
It's
just the
constantly
fact.
on the move. You just got to be constantly on the move.
You
Doesn't
have
matter
to
what.
maintain it. It's like a
Yeah.
maintenance thing.
So yeah, this is kind of really answers the question. It's sort of like it doesn't matter what specific goal or whatever, as long as you're doing something more than you did yesterday, doing better than you were yesterday. That's
Yeah,
the goal.
I
That's
think
it.
it's kind of like a focusing thing. It's a thing that makes your life into meditation because it creates a focus around which you can center. Yeah, what it is, now it goes back to like you have to pick and define what it is. But I do agree. If you, it's still, it goes into, it comes in phases. Like I've even heard the high achievers, they still go through that, right? They go through, like, this is what a midlife crisis is.
Right.
Because people who, especially people who are overachievers, who have been gunning after it for decades, and then suddenly midlife crisis happens and they realize that they have not been doing what they actually want to do or would want to do or what they enjoy. It strikes them. So that means that they literally have been doing all this effort unconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
But how is that possible? Surely you've been there every step of the way. Apparently, that's not the case.
So that's
And that's
the
crazy.
illusory nature of what you want, Because sometimes you think you want certain thing, but
Exactly. It means it's not as simple as that. You have to really inspect it and really remember it, and you have to make it into a practice. Essentially, kind of comes back. Like I mean, with me, it comes back to the practice. The fact that you have to inspect these things on a recurring basis, and because it can be that your goals become outdated, right?
right.
It's
Things
true that
change.
sometimes like the goal changes and sometimes they change quite fast. This part is also interesting to think about because how do you know when it's time to change the goal? Or how do you know when you're just giving up? It's a very fine balance as well.
But that's the part of where conversation is so important, because to me, my biggest takeaway is that I realize I have a problem. I have an apathy problem, right? To me, right?
Only according to your own
Only
judgment,
according to
right?
me.
You have to
That's what I'm
just think
saying.
it for yourself.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. I have a problem according to me, right? But I picked that up. So that's my problem, not anybody else's. And according to somebody, might not even be a problem. But for me, I feel like it's a problem where
Because there's some kind of inkling that comes to you, that realization, like, right, if I change that part, what would my life look like? And the inkling is saying you that it might look better. It might be
right
better in some metric, in some way.
in some ways, yeah. And the current thing is, to me, I'm lying to myself saying I'm okay, I'm comfortable. I mean, in a certain way, I am, right? I'm not that big in terms of like, oh, I must achieve this amount of material wealth or whatever. I don't really care about that. But still, like, you still want to have some sort of goal and thing that you are proud of doing, right? You gotta be,
Yes. Yeah.
you gotta have an endeavor. It's like life is an adventure.
Something you're building towards.
Yeah,
Like if you're just building toward it, that in itself, it's such an inherent enjoyment from that,
yeah,
because you do derive a sense of purpose from that. And again, it doesn't have to be someone else's purpose, ultimate person. It doesn't have to be validated by anybody else, but you
exactly.
yourself, by your own logic, whatever it is, if it makes sense to you and you decide this is good, I want to move towards that, I believe it will make your life better, 100%.
Yeah, I think this is an extension to how I was feeling about. I just maybe didn't make the connection, because right now, part of that is I am able to make a living by running my own little business, right? By just having a truck, move stuff for people. I can earn a livelihood. So part of that was the first paradigm shift, was that I can do it. Before was I can't because of this, that's that, and all excuses, right? But then once I start running this thing, I realize, oh, you know what? Yeah, that could be. World can be
Hmm.
different. You can just push a little bit. I mean, obviously you have to assess your risk, but that's the art of it. But again, just making that step, right? But now the problem I see myself is you're regressing now. Once you got there, maybe you plateauing because you're not chasing the
That's the
next,
problem with comfort.
right?
You can't get too comfortable. It
Yeah,
never pays off.
it's true. I'm getting too comfortable with the current
Because it's all the
state of
same, right?
things.
There's nothing new that's happening. There's nothing that stimulates you, and that itself is kind of a problem, because
Right.
part of the happy life is definitely keeping your mind and brain engaged, and that requires new situations and new problems to solve, but
Yeah.
not exactly problems, but things to be engaged in. Because
Yeah.
yeah, if you're not, it's like if you don't lose it, you lose it, right? It absolutely applies to the mind and the brain.
Yeah.
If you don't use it, it kind of atrophies, and
And
it's a real thing.
and this part, I think this is very beneficial to everybody. I think anybody who's listening to this podcast, I think this is how, again, conversation is so valuable to me, specifically this one, because I realized that not just realize my own apathy problems, but also I think for lots of people, one of the things that we need to remember that's going to help you a lot is you must think for yourself. Just as you're saying, you must figure it out for yourself, what the system or whatever it is, right? For yourself, and not worrying about what other people think or how other inputs. Don't forget about that. Just for yourself. And I see in the world a lot of times people are kind of similarly how I was coming across, where it's always about what other people think or what
Right.
other that is part of the problem. Because when you do that, you lose not only your sense of self, but then you lose the motivation, the directions that you need to have. Because this is my experience, like I said, when I start running my own little business, is that I see the possibilities and the fact that
Hmm.
I was working for myself. I didn't care about, okay, what ended up being, it doesn't matter, but I was doing it for myself. I'm doing it for my own benefits. And you see right now, a lot of people are, because they didn't have the strategic plan to achieve something for themselves, they accept all the society's propaganda, if you will, or any of the sort of thing that you learn from your parents, from other people talking, oh, go to school, do this and get a job, blah, blah, blah. specifically part of the problem is, okay, having a job is not a problem. It's a process for you to learn stuff. But imagine if you live your life not thinking about doing anything for yourself other than what job can I
Exactly.
get?
You'll be like a leaf on a wind. It will be
You're
blown by other people's
Yes,
decisions.
and this is what's happening right now. People are getting laid off. You work so hard for this company, and you mean nothing to them, right? You're just a number. So see, that's the problem, right? If you don't think for yourself, don't work for yourself, then you're never gonna get what you want in the end. Other people will decide for you, right? So this came to mind. Yes, that's part of the thing that I was doing. I guess I was proud that I did that in the first place, but now I kind of lost the thread. And this conversation kind of brought me back to, you know what? You got to continue to push it, right? You did the
Yeah,
initial thing you
it's
did
about
was
to staying
great,
proactive.
but you got to, what's the next level? Don't be comfortable thinking that, oh, I'm okay now. No, it's what's your personal goal? What's the next thing for yourself,
Yeah,
right?
there still has to be the next thing, because without it, you're not living essentially. You're not consciously living. Because I think this is where it connects with a lot of these mystical ideas, but this is the reason for these investigations, because it connects into how you construct your reality. Because this reasoning, this meaning that we keep talking about, it essentially your own personal structure. And it's yours, because whatever meaning you are constructing about, like if you're saying this project or this job is meaningful to me, you are then constructing everything else that allows you to engage and develop that whole structure. And I can see it almost as a substance in the world at this point, this meaning, because without it, there will be nothing. If you define this, I'm going to expand my business because it's this, this, and this, you're creating meaning for yourself. You're saying why it's meaningful.
Right.
And it doesn't have to have any validity other than you saying so and you defining
Right.
it so. You creating that meaning means that you make it important. And if anybody makes something important, usually they do something about it and they bring it about into reality. They literally manifest it that way. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
this is what happens to any of the, I don't know, companies that exist in the world. Somebody created it. Somebody invented it. Somebody fell through with the idea, and
Yeah.
they
And they
try to make it into
really
reality, and it becomes a thing,
brought it in.
right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter whether something succeeds or fails. It's just you have to have the metrics of, like, if you really believe in the thing enough, that you will always succeed in some ways, right? It might not be the
Yeah.
way
No,
you
that's something
thought it
I've
was going to
noticed
be, but
even on an example of this podcast, it centralizes you, it galvanizes you toward putting your effort and energies into a thing. And it just doesn't work. Like essentially, if you do that, something is bound to come out of it. Like you're
yeah,
not doing some random stuff,
right.
You have a specific direction in mind, and all your creative energies that you inherently have as a consciousness, they will revolve around that. New ideas will come about. Things will happen conducive to your goal and to your vision. And you don't have to define it all up front. All you have to do is keep putting on the energy and effort in there. But that only happens after you decide that is the thing I'm going to concentrate on. That is the worthy goal. This is worth my energies, my effort, and my wanting.
Yeah, and that's how you create the meanings and the interesting story for yourself, right? You just story of life. It's just about things happening, that you're making things happening. That's what
Yeah,
a life is. Otherwise, you're not
yeah,
living a life. You're just following with whatever happens to you. And that's the problem a lot of people face, is just
yeah. Like it's just not very interesting then, right?
right,
Because
you're not making it any,
if you're comfortable and you're doing the same thing day in and day out, and
yeah,
you're like watching some random shows, it's like it's not very interesting. It's right. Well, like, what is the story there? There's no story. Nothing's happening.
yeah. And sometimes it's the struggle that makes it
It makes it
meaningful.
meaningful too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
because it provides you the context, right? It's again the analogy with a video game.
right.
Like why?
You
This
need
is
a
why I never
challenge.
understood why people like in online games why people cheat. I don't get I don't get the logic of it. Like what's the point? Because you're not like nothing's happening, right? You're not doing anything. You're not achieving anything. That like the fact that you are winning over the folks with cheats just it removes the whole gaming element out of
Yeah.
it, right? which is there to provide you context to see like, ooh, can I figure it out? Ooh, these are elements. How does this work? It's the figuring out that's the fun and zest in the whole enterprise of a game
Yeah,
and life. So
it's true.
you gotta be busy figuring stuff out all the time. Otherwise, you're not doing much.
Yeah, and that's the fine balance. It's really hard to achieve because sometimes people can be too busy doing a thing that they don't realize they're just wasting their time on because it's not ultimately doesn't feed into their, because like you're saying, right? Some things can get outdated and you constantly have to renew and
Yeah,
you know?
it's been interesting to look at that in myself, like this year specifically, right? Since I've had changes with the employment status, because my creative energies definitely kind of jumped a few different things and they didn't continue. For example, right now I'm struggling to finish a course. I actually have a deadline to finish it by the end of the year for my project management profession because I started early in the year, but I literally have no motivation. And it's
You're
like
done.
it's crazy because I put it on my calendar. I'm like, all right, I got to do at least an hour a day of this and have the exam at the end of next year, but it's just not happening because like I'm just so not motivated to do it because I have
Yeah,
motivation to do all these other things that I'm totally motivated to do. So I'm like, I don't know what to
that
do.
just
I might just drop it or something.
that just means that you're over project management
I am kind of over it.
because that was just your job, right? That was
Yeah.
the job you kind of walked into.
And I guess it was fun for a while,
Yeah,
but then just every game runs its course.
yeah,
That's kind of a reality. Every game becomes stale and simple, I guess.
yeah.
I'm actually noticing it with this one game I've been playing for a few months, I guess, this year. The Warforge is that card game with the
Yeah, yeah.
Warhammer 40K themed. I'm actually surprised how much it engaged me because it's been pretty fun and it's still fun, but essentially I'm already seeing how it becomes less
Right.
and less interesting
Because I already
because
know
it
everything
becomes more
about
and
it.
more it becomes easier and easier and I'm becoming better and better at it, and essentially the challenge lowers so much that at some point you're like, there's no point in doing it because I navigate it seamlessly. It doesn't require my intelligence anymore. And this is could be a topic for a whole other episode, I guess, because I feel like that's happening with everything. And that's gotta be like a built-in mechanism for just life in general, because you don't really do the stuff that you get bored of, but it inevitably happens with
Yeah.
everything.
Because that's what,
Isn't that crazy?
yeah, like, I remember somebody was saying, something was saying about writing, like a writer, he was saying, writing is a part-time job. It's not a full-time job. You don't do
Right,
that full-time. Like, you're gonna burn out. There's just no way. You have to
right,
do it as almost like a hobby because it's not like, because the thing, you don't have enough energy and the wherewithal to
right.
just completely be doing that 24 like all the
In the
time.
mode, yeah.
It's
Unless you're Stephen King, I guess.
Yeah, where you're so into it that you're so into it, then yeah, if you don't burn
Yeah,
out,
somehow. But like, see, like this is gotta be like the top level of meditation, essentially. It's gotta be the same thing. If you're so into it that you are like stable in it, you're
mm,
able to do it
yeah,
all the time.
consistently,
I think that's what I think that's what anybody would want, really, right? Because first of all, it does create this stability where, oh, you don't have to search anymore. You can just be completely engaged in the thing and be in the state of flow, really, right? State of flow is like the happiness. Like for me, it's definitely the happiness because
yeah,
uh I experience it today, like in the day, because you kind of stop existing really. You forget about yourself.
right,
You completely get absorbed by
absorbed.
the process. And that's trippy because what does that even mean for
That's all you need.
who you are and what happiness is? It's like seems like happiness
Yeah,
is you disappearing.
because I think one of the problem that we gave ourselves is that we have these understanding and notions about. I don't know how much of a primal thing this is, but basically, because survival is number one, we have this anxiety about, oh, what if bad thing happen? What if, because that's in the back of the head that we're thinking is, oh, what if the money run out? But actually, if you think about it, as long as you're enjoying the process of what you're doing right now, things will work out. You will find a way. All these anxiety and worry they're just not reality. They're just fantasies. They're just illusions that you have, right? They're not an actual thing that it could be. I mean, it's just that the only way to do it is just like you have to have shift gears in thinking that, you know what, I'm just going to focus on the thing I think is important and everything else will work out because you will figure it out, right? Any problem that comes your way, you will figure it out. It will not be the same way that you thought it was going to be, whether good or
Yes.
bad, and nothing happened like that. It's always going to be different. So you might as well just go out on a limb and just do what you got to do. What you think is the, you know, so this is for everybody, people who are
Exactly. Yeah.
in,
It's been happening like this with this podcast, It's because initially I remember like, you start thinking about all the unknowns and all the
right,
problems that are there, and it's paralyzing because and in that it's useless
right.
because yeah, of course, there in front of you is essentially a lifetime, a whole year's worth of problem solving and whatever.
Yeah,
But what's the point of concerning yourself until you enter,
exactly.
meet that bridge and you have to cross it?
Yeah, that's the whole thing. So it's great. This is why we do this, it's
Yeah.
if anything, this is helping ourselves figuring things out,
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
this
It's
is
all
wonderful.
for personal reasons. And so, and with time, this has been understanding his crystallizing about how we're talking, how we're thinking, what topics are being brought up. So, for example, this mind map, essentially, the model is at this point is everything is a conversation starter
Yeah,
in the beginning,
yeah.
and then wherever
It's
we
wherever we
go
go.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I see. I wonder if we can finish this thing now, though. Yeah, maybe let's go through it quickly because I think we're at the end of it. Just to wrap up that whole topic where we were going, because I think we kind of arrived there anyway. So it was perfect.
Yeah.
We're discussing these collective and simulation hypotheses. That's where we ended up with. We talked about the collective hallucination. There's the fact that also the simulation hypothesis, that one still blows my mind, but it's the fact that if simulation is possible, like we're simulating computer games actually,
Right.
then it also is plausible, and not plausible, I guess still possible, that some advanced civilizations are able to simulate our reality. That's a truth. You understand that, right? Like it's possible that that's
Yeah.
the case, and we just don't have a way to tell.
Hmm.
Blows your mind. Then the quantum mechanics, that yeah, it kind of the observer dependent phenomena and inherent uncertainty, that's still unreconciled and trips you up and is what bridges a lot of spiritual movements actually. It's very interesting how some new age stuff adopted the whole quantum phenomenon without fully understanding it, of course, but still people are saying like, oh, reality is subjective, so you can do whatever, right? And then we have these crazy conversations that we have. The measurement problem in quantum physics remains unsolved. Actually, I don't remember what that points to. Measurement about
Because
the
the measurement itself affects the
right, the fact that
result.
it's effects. Yeah. So that's essentially it's a problem, right? Like we don't know, we don't know what it means,
It
how to
interferes,
reconcile
right?
that.
So by just measuring, it interfere with the result. So we don't
Yeah,
know
it's
what
just
the
something we
actual
noticed,
results. Yeah.
but then interpretation of this is where the science is going to be fun to reconcile that next, because it's literally entering the subjective and spiritual realm, right? This is where it gets trippy, because you're like, what do you mean? Wait. If the effects are being changed by my subjective observation, what does that say about reality? And then kind of the conclusions of all of this is that this limits of proof and knowledge based on all these little paradoxes and all these little problems that we encounter, that we reviewed in examining reality, these philosophical experiments. First is the fact that we can't even prove that other minds exist. We just don't have the tools or way to do that. So that's a fact. You can't be sure of that. The tools, the fact that we can't really rely on our senses, logic, memory, really anything. They're just accepted as they're given and they're correct in some way, but they're not proven facts. So there is no final definitive proof for them to be reliable and valid. The quantum indeterminacy that we just discussed, the fact that fundamental fabric of reality is probabilistic and uncertain. So we can't know it for sure, right? There's no objective reality where you look at it and it's like that always. That's a problem. external world legitimacy. So this is where it enters that belief territory, because we have the science and all these tools and we're using them proactively, and they provide certain results, right? There's certain things that we can expect from them, and we use them towards, and they're valuable for that. But ultimately, they don't have that objective basis that we're trying to arrive at. Scientific theories, the facts that they're simply still models and they're not absolute truths, and they're constantly refined and they're never final. So as we discussed, in 1,000 years, the science will be in a completely different spot. And if in fact we may arrive at science that completely disproves all the previous model,
Yeah.
and it will be a paradigm shifting event. And it's bound to happen because we've kind of been going through that our whole
Already.
history, right?
Yeah.
It's been unfolding like that forever. And so the conclusion of this, really, the big point is that to be intellectually humble, because as we just established, absolute knowledge is unattainable, right? All knowledge is conditional and interpretive, something that we already touched upon today.
Yeah.
It was a big topic. We clashed right on that because we can't even talk from that standpoint, because we don't even know what it could be, how we would gauge what ultimate absolute knowledge is. So that makes you and anybody a believer, whether you're a materialist or you believe in panpsychism or something. You, at some point, you're going to have to just say, oh, I just believe that, because you have no basis. There is no proof. That's intellectual honesty in recognizing the impossibility of definitive proof. And this part is valuable because essentially to remind people that no matter how of a staunch of an atheist you think you are, you're not in a much different spot than any religious person.
Yeah.
The foundation of faith, the fact that whether you believe in evolution or supreme creator or other hypothesis, you get to believe in it, and it's just faith. And the fact that building blocks of reality your reality is constructed by this faith and knowledge, but it's ultimately is kind of like a framework. Is the same way the environment in the video game is a certain context for you to play within, but it's not like that's the ultimate truth and the end type of knowledge. So do you think that's kind of what we've been talking about as well, right?
Pretty much we established that before we even went to talk about this point.
Yeah.
We already arrived at that during the conversation.
That's what I found interesting, that it's kind of like, yeah.
So that reinforces the conclusion that we have made, that this is kind of how we figure it out to be. It's supposed to recognizing the limitations of our understanding, but also kind of opens it up to because like just by thinking about it, I think a lot of times people have this misnomer, right? They think that, oh, I'm a scientific based kind of guy, I'm a materialist, I'm this and that, and somehow they think that that makes it absolute, because like people want to be right. That's the thing, right? Fundamentally, they have the impulse to be right. That's why people argue, right? It's like they don't want their opinion to be wrong, or they don't want their theory to be quote unquote wrong.
That's where it kind of becomes, that's where it's essentially the land of ego. Because all ego wants is to have this definition.
Right.
If a person identifies like with, no, I am a materialist, I'm a scientist, it's the ego trying to be this one concrete, static thing.
Yeah.
And the way of the world is anything but.
Exactly. So it's not something that you can have an encompassing definition of. Like you can find out about different things, but that could mean, yes, there are practical implications to certain things that we found out about the world, but ultimately it's still kind of you being the observer. You are just part of the process. You can't really completely separate yourself outside of it, right? Just as a human being, have emotions, have these things, you just experiencing it as that, and you can't just be completely objective, quote unquote, even about any of it.
It invites you just to be more open-minded and less sure. You're invited to live a more curious life, right? Curious-minded life. And if you arrive at something concrete and specific and you think that's it teaches you to not do that, essentially.
Yeah.
Because every time you do that, it ain't it.
Yeah, you could be very, very surprised about,
Yeah.
this is what's happening everywhere. As I just today, I there was a little factoid I learned about. There was that ship, a cargo ship that crashed into the Baltimore Bridge. That was a while ago. Caused a lot of it's a lot of damage. Just I think recently, just today or just a couple of days ago or something, they found out what went wrong. It was a little tiny connector, like an electrical line that was
Yeah.
not clipped in place because one of the
Of course.
label slipped off and that would not go into the thing. And they didn't know what to do because the ship stopped working. The electrical power went out because they couldn't
Right.
restart the thing.
It's a huge system. You can't
And then they
find the
couldn't
cause
steer
that's
the ship.
working.
And then they crashed into the bridge and that bridge fell. 6
Wow.
people died and cost billions, if not dollars, that has to be paid in damages and everything. But they found out now that's what happened. You think you know the world, something like that could happen, and you have no
Yeah.
idea. This took them
Yeah.
a month to study, okay, what's wrong with the ship? With all that many systems on board, you got to find out what went wrong. So they went with the engine, they went with the electrical system, and there are so many panels. There are thousands of those
Yeah. It's an
connections.
infinitely large system, essentially, as far as a single human is concerned. So to debug something like that is impossible, which is kind of a apt metaphor for the whole of reality. Now that I think about it, is that you can't, yeah, it's like you can't really debug it from one single standpoint because I don't think it ever makes sense.
It's impossible to do it, right?
Yeah,
How
maybe
would
it's
you,
just not doable, especially from a standpoint of a single human mind.
well, unless the advent of AI and what have you, where you can have these alternative heuristics. It's like in the movies, right? In the future, the technology can start scanning the environment and tell you how much of a certain element is there. That's a whole new heuristic because
Yeah,
otherwise,
that's a
right
whole
now,
other reality.
you gotta actually do like take samples to kind of separate out the elements and then take a reading, all that stuff. But now imagine you have a scanner, or by just having a glasses, it tells you exactly what the element is if you
Yeah,
ask it.
no, it's coming.
That's the next step to have a better view of what's going on around you, right? Because right now with human eyes, we can't. Even with all the computer system that we have, is limited to how much you can physically interpret the data. So imagine if technology can get to a point where, yes, it will basically increase the quality and the qualitative interpretations of what we can do science-wise. But, and again, there are just still too many variables to kind of, that's,
But I'm definitely waiting for that, for those type of interfaces. I've been dreaming about a holographic interface for a long time, dude. I'm a much more spatial guy, and if there was a holographic computer interface, I would love that. Like for all kinds of even creative stuff, but even for computer navigation. So
yeah.
yeah, go science, give us cool stuff.
And it's happening, right? It's happening right now.
Yeah.
There's a good
Well, this
spot
is
to,
where would be good to wrap it up, yeah, because we did go through a good amount of ground today. I
yeah.
wasn't sure how much of the thing we would cover because in the beginning we kind of were going through it pretty fast, but then we started hitting some poignant topics, and I think that's the recipe.